Part 57. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 584. Boom. The bronze mirror behind Su Tong cracked, and his consciousness flickered slightly. By some strange coincidence, he grabbed his hand on a book of props. In an instant, the book of props fell on his hand, and at the same time, an icy chill hit him. I saw that the prop book actually opened by itself, and a completely black prop card appeared in front of me. What is that? When someone saw the props book opened, they immediately stuck their heads out to take a look. However, after just one glance, their expressions changed greatly. Their bodies looked like rabbits whose tails were stepped on. They jumped up suddenly and flew backwards without hesitation. But he still ran a step slower, and saw that the prop booklet in Su Tong's hand was torn directly, and a strange black mist burst out. The other party just accidentally got some of it, and he immediately felt dizzy and weak. When the body fell to the ground, there was no movement. "Back up," someone screamed and backed away. Several figures retreated so fast that they wanted to leave the casino in an instant. What is that? Some people didn't know what happened. They only saw a black mist engulfing Su Tong, and couldn't help but ask the people around him. Blame. It is said that there are some extremely powerful certified players, whose strength is comparable to that of gods. After their death, a trace of their thoughts persists, parasitizing on their strongest item card. This kind of prop card will not be recycled by the script world. Once someone touches the prop card, the resentment inside will explode instantly. This kind of thing is not unusual, but the resentment erupting from the prop card in Su Tong's hand is so rich and terrifying. This is the first time I have seen it. While everyone flew back, Su Tong's eyes were already blurry. In the darkness, I could vaguely see a woman. The green shirt on the woman's body was dancing, and she stood tall in the vast fog. When she looked back, her almond-shaped eyes were like lightning, as if she had penetrated time, staring at Su Tong from the distant past. In a daze, the woman slowly extended her palm towards Su Tong. The slender fingers were slender and the skin was like gelatin. When he lifted it up gently, it would fall on Su Tong's body in an instant. In the midst of the lightning and flint, a shattering sound came, followed by a strong suction force, pulling Su Tong back quickly. Looking at the figure that was about to disappear in front of her, a flash of doubt flashed in the woman's eyes, but she did not chase after him. Instead, an inexplicable light laughter rose on the corners of her green lips. As Su Tong was awakened, Mr. Wu on the other side frowned at the same time. I saw a paper man covered with blood curses quietly revealed in the loose and collapsed luck above Su Tong's head. The body of the paper man gradually became clear, revealing a face without facial features, looking in the direction of Mr. Wu. Town object. Mr. Wu smiled contemptuously and thought to himself, "You are indeed an expert, and you actually know how to control things, but my skills are not like yours, eh?" The figure of the paper man was reflected in his pupils, and a line of words slowly appeared on the face of the paper man. Wu Taihe, from Jiangxi and Gannan, 39 years old. This is. Seeing this, Mr. Wu's expression suddenly changed. The person written on it was his own name. This is. In an instant, he suddenly woke up and realized the origin of that thing. The hair on his body stood on his head and he let out an unwilling scream. Damn, what the hell is this? Immediately, Mr. Wu hurriedly wanted to withdraw from the operation and made a desperate struggle, but it was too late. He saw a cracked mouth suddenly appeared on the face of the paper man. Kick kick kick. His mouth split open, he ate the face with the name on it, and let out a weird laugh. Suddenly, Mr. Wu's instinct was that the world was spinning. His eyes widened and his mouth opened, and he fell straight to the ground. Boom. The blazing fire of disgust ignited from under Mr. Wu's mask, and in an instant, the man was reduced to a ball of charcoal. Mr. Wu may have been wondering until his death, how could anyone use such a weird thing as a souvenir? As soon as Mr. Wu died, the lights in the casino began to have poor contact and became flickering on and off. Following the explosion of bang bang bang, several main lights exploded instantly. But Su Tong didn't know what happened at this moment. He had just woken up when he heard the prompt from the prop book. Congratulations to the player for escaping this unexpected death. Your luck will be permanently increased by 30%. Mission accomplished. Su Tong was stunned for a moment, then looked down and saw that the ghost bamboo lantern around his waist was broken. Since this ghost bamboo lantern was activated last time, it cannot be included in the props book. Su Tong has always carried it with him. It is not big anyway, so it can be used as a decoration. I didn't expect it to come in handy so quickly. Looking at his palm again, he saw that the prop book in his hand had disappeared. What replaced it was a very strange prop card. This prop card was still shrouded in black mist, and its original appearance could no longer be seen clearly. However, Su Tong looked at it and vaguely felt that there seemed to be a pair of eyes staring at him from behind this prop card. This made him think of the woman he had just seen, but the strange thing was that although he remembered the woman's figure, he could not remember the woman's face. The most profound thing in my memory is those black and white eyes. Hey! There's always a witch trying to harm me. Thinking of this, Su Tong curled his lips and wanted to throw the prop card into the recycling bin aside with a look of disgust on his face. As a result, as soon as he threw it away, the prop card disappeared and was replaced by the sound of the prop book. Obtain abnormal prop cards. Abnormal prop cards cannot be discarded, destroyed, or traded. This. Su Tong called out the props book with a surprised look on his face. I saw that there was indeed an extra black prop card in the prop book, and the entry in the prop book was also very simple, with only 4 words, "The ghost lingers." Apart from these 4 words, there is not even a single entry introduction. Su Tong could only express his helplessness about this. I can only say that I am out of luck. I will ask my master when I get back to see if there is any way to save the demon girl inside. When he looked back, he found the blind man lying on the ground, and everyone around him was looking at him quietly with his head in the back. Seeing that Su Tong survived, everyone didn't know what to say for a while. This luck is incredible. Some people exclaimed, and even thinking about the level of resentment just now makes them feel frightened. It's really incredible that this person survived. It's not in vain this time. Just because of this matter, we will make a lot of money. Some people exclaimed that they were just looking for excitement and relaxation when they came to the casino. Unexpectedly, they really caught up. Just this matter was enough for them to go back and talk for a while. There were different opinions for a while, but Su Tong had already walked up to the blind man and helped him up. After patting him on the back and shouting several times, the blind man woke up in a daze. After waking up, the blind man first looked at the luck above Su Tong's head, and he was relieved when he saw that his luck had not been shattered. It's okay, good boy, my eyes sometimes make mistakes. You are a cruel person. The blind man sighed. I don't know whether it refers to Su Tong's huge gamble, or to the fact that he dared to use the Book of Life and Death as his own treasure. Su Tong firmly denied this comment and said, "That's because you don't understand me. If you don't believe me, go to my neighborhood and ask around. Who doesn't say good things about me?" He. The blind man hummed and smiled, but he didn't dare to take this sentence seriously. After the fuss just now, Su Tong found that his luck had begun to fade away little by little. I counted the time in my mind and knew that my luck had arrived. So he quickly stood up, took out 2 more props books from the display cabinet behind him, took out a packaging bag, and threw more than 10 props books into it. "Come on, let's find a clean place and open the blind box." Hearing this, the blind man nodded. He really wanted to leave. If he didn't leave the casino, something would happen. Are you leaving now? Brother, please leave a message. If there is anything you don't want, just let me know. Seeing that the two were about to leave, everyone immediately rushed forward and left their contact information, hoping that Su Tong could contact them if he issued any unnecessary prop cards, and the price could be easily negotiated. But Su Tong ignored it and pulled the blind man out of the casino. The casino manager watched the two people leave helplessly, but there was nothing he could do. Casinos have casino rules, feng shui can be used, and bad luck can also be used. But it is absolutely impossible to use force. It is even more impossible to prevent players from leaving, otherwise the punishment of the exhibition will come in seconds, which may make them lose their souls at the least, or even the big boss of the casino will be affected. At that time, things will become more than he, a small casino manager, can handle. I saw the two of them walking into the crowd. In a blink of an eye, they could no longer be seen. After all, each player wore a mask and their bodies were shrouded in shadow. Once they walked out of the crowd, no one could see them. So come. As soon as the two left, news about the casino soon began to spread throughout the high-end exhibition area. Everyone was clamoring for a moment, and the unpopular item of gambling prop book instantly became a popular item. In order to do business, the casino immediately threw all the display cabinets that Su Tong had selected into the recycling bin and replaced them with a new prop book. The effect was immediate, and soon the book of gambling props became a hot topic. After all, it doesn't matter how much money you can win in a casino. But those rare high-level prop cards cannot be bought with any amount of script points. Just like the full moon scimitar, it is said that someone posted a reward that day, and the sky-high price of 400,000 yuan directly rushed into the top 10 positions on the reward list. But Su Tong and the blind man no longer pay attention to these things. At this moment, the blind man was dragging Su Tong to a good place. As he walked, he listened to the blind man say, "Not many people know about this place. I'll take you in to have a look. It just so happens that we can enjoy it too." I saw where the blind man was pointing, a small building with a tall door. There was a plaque hanging on the door with 4 words written on it, Angelica Soup House. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 585. Gilu Gilu. In the bamboo forest courtyard, hot water steam rises. There were 2 small springs in the small courtyard, separated only by a screen. Su Tong didn't feel hot when he was soaked in the hot spring, but the warm feeling all over his body made him feel very comfortable. After taking a look at the prompts in the prop booklet, I found that this hot spring actually increased physical fitness by 2%. Just for this reason, it is worthy of the price of 300 script points. My little friend, even though my eyes are hard to use, I can still read countless people. Today I made a mistake in seeing you. It's true that there is something out of the world, and there is someone out there. I admire you, I admire you. You're welcome. I'm not that magical, I'm just lucky. Hee, in our line of work, luck is strength, Blind Kong said disapprovingly, and then he inevitably sighed, the next generation is scary, the next generation is really scary, what a pity, this page in the book of life and death. Oh, you can see this too. Su Tong didn't expect that the other party could actually see the artifact hidden in his luck, which made him even more surprised by the ability of Blind Man Kang's double pupils. Blind Man Kang emerged from the hot spring and saw that he had taken off his mask and wiped the water droplets from his face with his hands, revealing his original appearance, a thin face, in his early 70s, with a goatee and the temples are white, and the hair is already gray and blue. There is a pair of secondary pupils hidden in the 2 pairs of white eyes, looking at the luck above Su Tong's head through the screen. Fluorescence was faintly flashing in his secondary pupils, but he could not clearly see the full picture of the treasure hidden in Su Tong's luck. I just discovered it accidentally. No one touched you, and I couldn't see it. Hey, it's fitting that that guy was unlucky. When he met you, a wicked person, you actually used such an evil thing as a token. Who would dare to do anything to you in the future? If you manipulate your luck, you will inevitably die. This method is incredible. After saying that, blind Mankang suddenly thought of something and said, "Dare you ask me, little friend, if the mountains and forests are burned with fire and it rains heavily, hundreds of people in the rivers and rivers will ask me which one?" As soon as these words came out, the screen was opened by Su Tong, revealing Su Tong's true face. Make fists with both hands, thumbs pointing up. It turns out he is the senior of General Jindian. Seeing Su Tong's gesture, blind Mankang couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and looked at Su Tong suspiciously. "Kimen? You? Shuigui is my master." Crash. As soon as Su Tong Xiao's voice fell, Kang Xiaozi jumped up, jumped far away with his bare buttocks, and stared at Su Tong with wide eyes. "Speaking of which, please put your hands down first, I'm afraid of you worship me." Su Tong was startled and immediately understood what blind Mankang meant. He put down his hand and said, "This is an exhibition. What are you afraid of?" After hearing this, blind Mankang remembered that this was an exhibition and all use of force was prohibited. His tense face suddenly relaxed, he knotted his toes, covered his hands with his hands, and got back into the hot spring to soak. "Why, do you have a grudge against my family?" Su Tong lay beside the soup pool and asked with his face close to his face. Blind Kong rolled his eyes when he heard this. "It's as if someone's family has no enmity with yours." Su Tong was unable to refute this. There are thousands of nine-rate families, and Master Shuigui kills half of them. Most of those who came from the founding of the People's Republic of China had a grudge against their family. However, I, Jinmin, really have no enmity with your 7th section. Your master released my father back then. By the way, my father's surname is Chu and his name is Chu Zhao. Hey! Isn't this a coincidence? Your father and I have known each other for a long time. When Su Tong heard the name, he couldn't help grinning. When Master Chu Zhao led his men to surround him, he also spent a lot of effort to break out of the siege. If the master hadn't arrived at the last moment, his life would have been at stake. At that freight station, unexpectedly, today, he would meet a descendant of Master Chu Zhao. Instead of having any resentment, Su Tong exclaimed that it was a coincidence. "If that's the case, since we are equals, I will call you Brother Kong from now on." Blind Mankang suddenly smiled bitterly when he heard this, but he was also reasonable. After all, certified players' fists were the key, and seniority was not important. "You have big fists, so it's okay to call you Grandpa. Then why isn't your surname Chu? Didn't this happen later?" "My father was approved. In order for me to go to school, my family changed my surname to my mother's." When Blind Mankang mentioned the past, Blind Mankang sighed. Fortunately, his father finally passed on the housekeeping skills to him, otherwise he would have been perfect at the Midas. It was this secret skill, coupled with the fact that he was born with strange eyes, that why he inexplicably became a player and did not die early in the script world due to old age and frailty. Instead, he relied on his special skill to turn danger into danger and became certified players. Let's not mention these unhappy things. Anyway, it's fate that we two brothers can meet each other. Let's go upstairs for a drink later. Blind Mankang suggested. Forget it about drinking. I'm new here and I plan to continue shopping. I still have some unfinished chores. Su Tong waved his hand and rejected Kang Xiaozi. Blind Mankang thought about it and knew that Su Tong must still have a lot of things to do, so he didn't force it. You should have just become a certified player. I'll tell you a place. Go out and turn left to the first store. There is a training ground. It takes an hour to get a silver badge. It's a good place. It's the fastest way to improve your combat effectiveness. You can go try it. Then Kang Xiaozi left another phone number for Su Tong, saying that he could come to him at any time if he had any difficulties. Thank you, bro. Su Tong glanced at the phone number, remembered it in his heart, and burned the business card with a wipe of his hand. Now that you're feeling comfortable, I'm going upstairs. If you're ready to leave, you don't have to wait for me. I'm a member here. Blind man Kong stretched, stood up from the soup pool, put on a large bathrobe and walked upstairs. In fact, he was making room for Su Tong to open the prop book. As for what treasures there might be in those prop books, blind man Kong didn't want to see or know. The province was stimulated by Su Tong. Blind man Kong left, and Su Tong sat alone by the soup pool. He opened the bag at hand and saw that it was all filled with props books that he had selected. According to his original plan, he was going to gamble all the 100,000 scripts in one go. As a result, there was an accident midway through and there was a delay. As a result, about 50,000 script points were gambled away in the end. Su Tong could also accept this result. Just like the hexagrams I predicted before, Zi Feng is too big, so you can't do anything absolutely, otherwise there will be disaster. Now these more than 10 props books are enough for me to make a fortune. Next, of course, is the welcome blind box opening session. Su Tong slowly took out a prop book and opened it slowly in his hand. The prop cards appeared in Su Tong's eyes. And at this moment, deep in the netherworld, on Luofu Mountain, there were only sounds of killing, and from time to time a group of Yin soldiers were galloping. The Yin soldiers wearing armor on the ground were waving their spears uniformly, their terrifying murderous aura condensed into a puff of smoke, and with a strange cry, the surrounding mountains and forests trembled and cracked. At this time, there is an inconspicuous small place on the top of the mountain, with a large cave above it. I saw birds chirping and flowers fragrant at the entrance of the cave, and several particularly large hot spring pools with gurgling white mist. Several ghost generals on Luofu Mountain stood on both sides holding swords, staring intently at the two people playing chess behind them. Rook 2 into 6, kill the horse. Watching the chess pieces fall, Shuigui frowned for a moment. In front of him, there sat a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe and a beaded crown, staring sternly at the chess pieces on the chessboard. Shuigui stared at the chessboard and felt worried for a while. At this time, he had to either lower the position or move the general. But if he lowered the position, his own knight would not be able to keep it. If he moved the general, the opponent would jump to the general. Luo Feng sent a messenger to you on the 6th day, asking you to help. It's up to you to handle this matter. It's best if you can help. It doesn't matter if you can't, as long as it doesn't delay the business. Du Ziren suddenly spoke at this moment. When Shuigui heard this, without moving his eyes from the chessboard, he arched his pawn forward and said, "We can't just help with this matter. There are certain points in time where he can't get in, and there's nothing I can do about it. Humph, if you want to get ahead, you have to fight hard. Only if you dare to fight will you win." Du Ziren sneered, raised his hand and pushed the pawn with a soldier, and then Shuigui hit the head with a cannon. The two of them fought fiercely. Next to the chessboard, there is a warrant, which is Du Ziren's token and the bet this time. But if he loses, Shuigui's next salary will be in vain. Just as the two of them were killing each other, they were going back and forth. Report. A ghost general came up and handed an order to Du Ziren. Du Ziren was so fierce in the killing that he had no time to be distracted and just said, "Read it." According to the order of the Northern Yin Fengdu Emperor, the envoys from the Western Territory outside the territory are here. They are about to arrive. They sent envoys to Yushan to offer gifts. They also ordered the 5 ghost emperors to go to the Yinkai Hall to discuss reception matters. I hereby express my gratitude. When Du Ziren heard that it was the order from Emperor Fengdu, he put down the chess piece in his hand and turned around to take the order. Just when Du Ziren turned around, Master Shuigui rolled his eyes and gently moved his car one space to the left. After Du Ziren finished reading the order, he put it away in his sleeve, still muttering to himself, what kind of tricks were those scumbags in the West doing? Never mind it, they are a bunch of clowns. All they have to do is use the soldiers to block the water and the earth to cover them up, General. Shuigui smiled and pushed his car forward, eating the opponent's taxi and directly checking mate the game. Du Ziren was startled and glanced at the chessboard. How did your rook get here? You just came here like this? Emperor, you still have official duties, so I won't stay any longer. I'll just take the things away. Let's continue next time. Shuigui didn't wait for Du Ziren to say anything else, stood up and ran out. Humph. This old thief. Du Ziren curled his lips when he saw this, and the ghost general who was delivering the order whispered, Emperor, I just saw him cheating. I know, this guy doesn't follow the rules. Du Ziren threw away the chess piece in his hand. Faced with the doubts of his subordinates, his thick eyebrows rose on his tough face, and his eyes gradually became sharper, but there are some things that you can't do if you follow the rules. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw an attendant running over with his head lowered. Your Majesty, just now Inspector Shui took your warrant and took away the sheep you kept in the back mountain. Du Ziren. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 587. Please walk slowly and welcome to visit next time. After walking out of the no-return spring, Su Tong couldn't help but stretch. He had to say that there was a big difference between the services of high-end exhibitions and ordinary exhibitions. Not only is the service here good, but more importantly, the resources here are so abundant. Just by taking a dip in the hot springs, my physique has been improved. Even if the improvement is very weak, the fatigue on my body has been swept away, and my whole body has become lighter. The hot spring bath he soaked in only cost 300 script points. He had seen the price list. This kind of soup is just the most common one, but there are also stronger ones, such as the Huanchan soup, which costs 3,000 scripts per pool. It can not only restore youth temporarily, but also increase lifespan. The enlightenment fountain worth 5,000 script points can allow people to enter a state of enlightenment. As for the highest-end non-return soup, the price list did not explain the effect, but the price of a full 50,000 script points has successfully made Su Tong understand what luxury is. Even though he already has nearly 100,000 script points, he is reluctant to spend this money. Calculating the time in his mind, he found that there was still some time before the agreement between himself and William and the others. Su Tong thought about it and decided to go to the training ground that Kang Xiazi mentioned. According to the place mentioned by Kang Xiazi, Su Tong walked over and took a look. Sure enough, there was a small shop with a training ground sign hanging outside the door. Before Su Tong could walk in, he saw two people walking out, complaining as they walked. Hey, it's really unlucky. The more challenging it is, the harder it gets. The proficiency gained each time is too little. Yes, the price is not cheap. 2 silver badges, only given for half an hour, are still low difficulty. High difficulty requires gold badges. Damn, there are so many gold badges. Wouldn't it be nice for me to exchange them for special props? Su Tong walked in and took a look. He saw a small counter, only about 10 square meters of space, and no door. He could see everything at a glance, and he couldn't help but wonder whether this place was really reliable. I glanced at the price list above and saw that the charging standard for the training ground was not script points, but badges. Starting with the silver badge, you can only enter the low-level difficulty training ground. The intermediate difficulty training ground requires a gold badge and is only 1 hour long. As for the advanced training ground, diamond level badges are actually required. I have a lot of badges on my hands, so the price is no problem for me. It's a good time to give it a try and improve your swordsmanship. In addition, I just opened all the prop books. After throwing away those worthless prop cards, which he had thrown into the exhibition and sold at low prices, he still kept 3 prop cards. You can also take the opportunity to try out the effect, gain a wave of proficiency, and increase your combat effectiveness. Thinking of this, Su Tong stepped forward and handed over a gold badge. The girl at the counter saw this and handed Su Tong a rule description. Before entering the training ground, players need to shield 1/3 of their own prop cards and are prohibited from using the abilities of these prop cards. In the training ground, the player's skill cooldown time will be greatly shortened, and the script points consumed by prop cards will be removed. Players who die in the training ground can be resurrected, but they have to pay extra script points. The first resurrection is 500 points, the second time is 1000, the third time is 2000, and so on. However, to gain proficiency, you need to successfully complete challenges. Otherwise, the proficiency gained will be very limited. Su Tong thought for a moment and blocked most of his prop cards, including core prop cards such as Dark Physique and Papercraft Book. Players are ready. Do you want to enter the training ground? Hearing the prompt, Su Tong chose yes without hesitation. Shua. A sudden feeling of stepping on the air came over him, and when Su Tong felt his feet sinking, the appearance in front of him had completely changed. Looking around, he saw an empty stone floor. Ding! Training is about to begin, players please be prepared. After a cold reminder, the stone slabs on the ground gradually cracked, and 2 humanoid puppets rose from the ground. Only 2? Su Tong looked at the puppet, and saw the puppet slowly raised its head, suddenly pulled out a dagger from its waist, and stabbed Su Tong. The speed was so fast that it even created a whirlwind in place. Seeing the dagger stabbing at him, Su Tong did not draw his sword, but raised his palms to greet him fiercely. He just took the opportunity to test out the 18-road Kaishin palm that he bought when he entered the exhibition. This set of palm techniques is known for its strength. Su Tong's arms are like a dragon, but it is not brute force, but combined with the flexibility of Wukin's grasping hand, he skillfully avoids the dagger stabbed by the puppet, and moves straight slap it on the puppet's chest. Boom! The palm of the hand and the wooden armor on the puppet's chest collided, making a loud noise, like thunder falling, and a force exploded from the puppet's back, breaking into countless wood chips. Seeing this, the other puppet turned its sword and pierced Su Tong's heart, but Su Tong moved faster, kicked the puppet's arm joint, smashed the puppet's arm, and slapped the puppet's head with his backhand. Snapped! Immediately, the puppet's head was smashed to pieces, but surprisingly, although the puppet had no head, its body still rushed forward, as if to knock Su Tong down. He spread his arms and pounced forward, only to find that his pounce was in vain. Su Tong's toes were just a little bit on the ground, his feet stepped on the 7 stars, and his figure became erratic for a moment. Lianji mode increases dodge by 20%. It is said that when learning swordsmanship, you should first learn to walk, and then practice walking and boxing. Footwork is no less important than swordsmanship. A tan kick kicked the puppet away. After dealing with the 2 puppets lightly, before Su Tong could take a breath, the surrounding floor slowly cracked, and this time 4 puppets were directly refreshed. The 4 puppets appeared without any pause, and immediately surrounded Su Tong. Seeing this, Su Tong simply used his fists and palms together, combining the 5 birds grasping hand and the 18-road mountain opening palm together. After all, he is a grand master, even if he is from a side sect, but after stepping into this threshold, other things can be understood by analogy. Coupled with the blessing of the prop card Chuan Wu, after one set, I gradually figured out my own routine. However, as he continued to fight, Su Tong found that there were more and more puppets unknowingly. Moreover, the puppet that originally wore wooden armor began to wear a layer of iron armor in the blink of an eye. This instantly reduced the lethality of Kaishan Zhang by a notch. After all, one palm of his hand can crack the iron armor and shatter the enemy's internal organs, but facing a puppet that is dying of pain, one palm strike can only break part of the puppet's branches. Seeing that the number was increasing, Su Tong stopped attacking with his fists and waved his hand to summon the Chunyang sword. The blade of the sword clanked and emitted a glistening cold light, and when it was swung, it emitted an icy cold murderous aura. Just in time to give it a try, this item card, Fiery Slash. Su Tong took a deep breath and swung his sword, only to see the sword body emitting fire, and he slashed hard with the sword. Boom! A huge wave of fire rolled up, and extremely hot temperatures and air waves erupted from Su Tong's feet. The puppets that came closer turned into torches in an instant, and were blown away by the shock wave that followed. Pyrophilia. As soon as the sword edge was retracted, Su Tong's scorching flame suddenly increased suddenly on the sword blade, turning into a fire tiger and making a deafening roar. Fire sword technique. The wearer can obtain the fire sword chi. Passive skill 1, Heart of Fire. Increases resistance to fire by 70%. Active skill 1, Fire Addiction, LV1. Proficiency, 0/100. Spend 20 script points to summon the tiger-shaped sword energy to cause fire explosion damage to targets within 100 meters in front. The damage is based on the fire skill amplification level. Cooling time, 1 hour. Active skill, Fire Slash. It consumes 30 script points to create explosive flames within a 20-meter diameter area centered on itself. The surrounding targets have a 60% chance of being knocked back. Cooling time, 2 hours. Roar. The flaming tiger-shaped sword energy let out a deafening roar, and suddenly a fiery red cloud exploded from the puppet. It was so heavy that it was suffocating, and the red earth collapsed directly. A large piece of the puppet exploded into pieces, and the fragments were instantly turned into charred ash by the terrifying high temperature. But this is just an appetizer. Demon had arrived. The fire of hell ignited and turned into a set of evil armor on Su Tong. The fire of hell burned everything and covered the blade of the sword along his hand. When the corrosive fire, hellfire, and flaming sword energy were mixed together, the flames turned into a strange vermilion, giving people an indescribable sense of evil. Plus Pure Yang Sword, add 1 to sword skills. The advent of the Demon King add 2 to fire skills. The combination of the two has increased the lethality of the fiery sword chi to level LV3. Thanks to an artifact like the Pure Yang Sword, otherwise, other weapons might not be able to withstand the powerful power brought by such strange flames. I saw the sword edge waving, and these mountain-like puppets were almost defenseless under the vermilion flames. When the sword edge passed by, the terrifying high temperature directly burned them into ashes. If other players saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked. Fire players are generally recognized for their powerful bursts, but most fire players have very long cooldown limits on their skills. There are very few that last as long as Su Tong's, and the strange vermilion flames are so terrifying that they are shockingly powerful. In the blink of an eye, the puppets that were refreshed were burned to ashes. Kaka kaka. At this time, 2 puppets were attacking Su Tong from behind. The puppets were holding long spears, and the spear points stirred up large after images in the air. Their speed and terrifying power were enough to kill ordinary players instantly. Su Tong jumped up, like a leaping falcon. While dodging the gunshot, he collided back and forth among many puppets. These puppets counterattacked as fast as lightning, but Su Tong easily dodged them. I saw that after he activated the active skill of Master of Colorful Play, the boots under his feet also emitted a faint green light. This pair of shoes is the new prop card that Su Tong drew from the prop book. Void boots. After wearing it, your dodge ability is enhanced by 40%. And comes with an active skill and a passive skill. Active skill, Lingbo Wuhen. Consumes 10 script points and increases movement speed by 200% after activation. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooling time, 2 hours. Passive skill, walking in the snow without leaving a trace. The holder ignores the troubles of natural terrain. For example, in mountains, forests, and snowy areas, which are difficult places to walk, the user can walk on flat ground without being affected by the natural environment. Coupled with Lianji Machen's step, Su Tong was even more erratic as he walked and dodged, like a ghost. If these shoes are combined with his own item card Leopard Soul Cloak, the straight line speed can almost reach an unimaginable speed. The figure shuttled back and forth, the flames on the sword blade were retracted, and the sword seemed to be both clever and heavy. It moved forward against the fist blade stabbed by the puppet, and effortlessly brought the puppet's huge body to the ground. Before the puppet could get up, Su Tong swiped his side sword, and the blade came from bottom to top, as fast as thunder and lightning. The sword edge made a smooth, mirror-like cut, and directly cut off the puppet's head. This basic Tai Chi sword book is worthy of being bought when Su Tong was at the peak of his luck. Many people are confused by the name of this prop card. In fact, the power of this swordsmanship is much more powerful than those ordinary basic skills. With the blessing of the two prop cards martial arts and sword weapon, Su Tong was in a trance, and his mind entered a state of enlightenment. The pure yang sword in his hand is sometimes sharp and fast, sometimes as slow as a turtle. With swordsmanship that seems both fast and slow, he has mastered the essence of Tai Chi sword in his hands. At this point, it can be considered as entering the palace. Even when facing more and more puppets in front of him, he didn't feel any effort at all. Instead, he felt that the more he killed, the more courageous he became. It's a pity that these are puppets, not flesh and blood. Otherwise, if you activate the chapter of killing again, your strength will rise to another level. Of course, it was thanks to the pure yang sword that I was able to maneuver freely in such a difficult training ground. Even if we put aside the entry bonus of the Chun Yang sword, the blade of the Chun Yang sword can cut iron like mud, making these puppets as solid as iron almost invincible. However, the mechanism of the training ground is that as time goes by, more puppets will be refreshed, and occasionally there will be a few elite puppets. These elite puppets not only wear thick plate armor, but the weapons on their hands also begin to diversify. Gradually, Su Tong began to have some difficulty with his sword skills alone. If it weren't for the Chun Yang sword that could still cut through the armor of these puppets, I'm afraid that I might not be able to hold on with just my sword skills. Boom! Suddenly, a thunderous bow sounded. Su Tong had already evaded in advance with his strong perception. However, the terrifying airflow caused by the arrow passing by him still tore a bloody wound on Su Tong's chest. Looking sideways, he saw a humanoid puppet standing not far away, with a general's helmet on his head and an exaggerated longbow in his hand. Even though the arrow just made the puppet freeze for a long time, the pressure brought by the bow was still very strong. Obviously this is the puppet general for this challenge. Seeing this, Su Tong's eyes turned cold and he swung his sword to kill him. The densely packed puppets surged up like a shield wall, not giving themselves a chance to rush through. There were even several elite puppets standing in front of Su Tong. The blades and giant hammers in their hands formed an airtight wall, forcing Su Tong to fly back with overwhelming crushing force. Instead of rushing over, the distance became further and further away. At this time, the puppet's stiffness gradually recovered, and he bent the bow and nocked an arrow. An arrow as thick as an adult's arm was placed on the long bow. Kaka. The bowstring made a harsh and tense sound, and the long bow was pulled into a full moon by the puppet. At the critical moment when the arrow was shot, Su Tong's figure suddenly disappeared in front of these puppets. At the same time, with a light blue light, Su Tong's figure appeared behind these puppets, a distance away. The archers were no more than 10 meters away. A distance of more than 10 meters is enough for me. The leopard soul cloak was activated, leaving only an afterimage, which arrived in front of the archer almost in the blink of an eye. Buzz. A sword cry followed the sword light that pierced the archer's chest the next moment. At this time, the puppets all turned around and found that the archer had been killed by Su Tong. Time Walker. This is the third prop card Su Tong got from the prop book, and it is also the most precious prop card. Time Walker. Time will be your friend, but be careful, those who rely too much will eventually die in time. Passive Skill 1, 7th Little Awakening. The carrier has a strong sense of time and space around him, and can detect abnormalities early that ordinary people cannot detect. Active Skill 1, Traveler's Mark. Spend 2000 script points to leave a mark where you have walked. When you encounter danger, you can activate the mark and turn back time to the moment when you left the mark. The mark interval must not exceed 1 minute. And cannot have an impact on other people and the environment. Cooling time, 1 week. The puppet general was killed. This challenge was successful. Following the prompt, Su Tong disappeared from the training ground. At the same time, a large number of proficiency levels emerged, instantly increasing the proficiency in both the fire swordsmanship and the sword weapon. Because of transferring martial arts, Su Tong had already gained some proficiency in the training ground. At this moment, a lot of proficiency came up. Looking again, the fire swordsmanship skill Fire Passion has been directly upgraded to level 3, and the level of the sword has also reached level 4. The 5 Animal Grappler is still a little short of reaching the full level. It is worth mentioning that after the sword reaches level 4, other entries remain unchanged, but a passive is added. Sword Heart increases understanding of the way of the sword by 30%. It is indeed a good thing. Although I can't use it now, if I want to make a breakthrough in the way of swordsmanship, this passive will be even more precious. It's really a good place, but it's too expensive. Seeing the rapid improvement in proficiency, Su Tong looked at his gold badge again, and finally resisted the urge to go in and try again. Seeing that the time was almost up, with a thought in his mind, he left the high-end exhibition area and went to the bar of the ordinary exhibition. It was still the same position, but after sitting down, Su Tong couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The guy who once sat opposite him and talked with him might never come back. 5 beers were ordered and placed on the table. Not long after, the 2 people stood up from the nearby table and sat directly in front of Su Tong. Unto Zhao San. The 2 nodded and heard Zhao San's voice coming from the team channel. It's us. Identity confirmed. Su Tong picked up the wine glass and took a sip. To Enman, to Damu. In the last script world, the deaths of Enman and Damu were definitely not what Su Tong wanted to see. In any case, the other party entered Amontes hospital with the intention of helping him. Su Tong could not say that he felt guilty about the deaths of the 2 people, but he was still a little helpless. William and Zhao Sanyi toasted together. The death of their teammate was also a huge blow to them. After the 3 of them drank all the wine in their glasses. Before William could speak, Su Tong submitted an application order to withdraw from the team. Hey, actually you can think about it. After all, our team is already a relatively mature team. If you are willing, the position of the deputy team is yours. William seemed to have expected this result, and he knew at a glance that Su Tong would not be the kind of person who likes to rely on others. But he still tried to win over Su Tong as much as possible. No, I still have my teammates. After completing the promotion task, I will start building my own team. All right. After William heard this, he stopped pressing and agreed to Su Tong's application neatly. Did you apply for arbitration last time? Zhao San remembered something and asked. Also, as players who participated in the script, they also received a compensation. Of course, Although the compensation may not be as generous as Su Tong's, it has also saved them a lot of losses. Regarding this question, Su Tong just grinned and did not answer. William took out a piece of paper from the prop book and put it on the table, pushing it in front of Su Tong. No matter what, we are playing as a team, so you should be more careful recently. Su Tong glanced at the piece of paper. It turned out to be a wanted order, and the wanted person turned out to be that fat man Li Bo. Su Tong couldn't help but feel a little happy now. Fortunately, he was wearing a mask, so William and Zhao San couldn't see his expression. This guy. Looking at this guy's reward, it turns out that it's not low, it has reached 8,000 script points. I don't know if he has done something so outrageous that someone would actually spend money to arrest him. But before this incident, De Mu seemed to have mentioned it to him, but he didn't take it to heart at the time. He nodded and accepted the wanted notice. William stopped wasting time with Su Tong and stretched out his palm. I hope we can continue to cooperate when we meet next time, provided that you are alive first. Su Tong nodded and stretched out his hand. That's the best. After the two got up and left, Su Tong did not leave the bar. Instead, he asked the bartender to serve 2 more beers. Place 1 cup in front of yourself and 1 cup on the empty seat opposite. He slowly took out a cigar that he hadn't smoked for a long time from the prop book, cut off the butt of the cigar, lit the flame, and slowly roasted the cigar. Until the surface of the cigar is carbonized, put it to your mouth and smoke it. Time passed by minute. The cigar gradually became shorter on Su Tong's fingertips. It wasn't until half an hour passed that Su Tong finally threw the cigar into the ashtray, stood up and walked out of the bar. When I reached the door of the bar, I didn't forget to look back. Unfortunately, no one sat in the empty seat. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 588. When Su Tong left the exhibition and returned to reality. It was getting dark late in the morning and late at night. There are still thick snowflakes floating in the sky. When I walked along the path to the hotel, I found Wu Run, the horseboy from before, and others sitting in the hotel lobby waiting. After seeing Su Tong come in, Wu Run immediately stepped forward and said, "The matter has been settled. He is upstairs. Do you want to go and take a look?" Before, I had entrusted the affairs of Yang Zixuan's sister and nephew to the fairies. After all, this was their territory. It was much easier for them to come forward to help than it was for me. I just didn't expect that the matter would be resolved so quickly. Go and see. Su Tong nodded. If there were no accidents, he would be ready to set off early tomorrow morning and send Yang Zixuan's sister and nephew to western Hunan first. When the time comes, Gao Zhou will take care of them in western Hunan. As long as they enter Xiangzi, the living expenses left by Yang Zixuan will be enough for them to live comfortably for a lifetime. As soon as he entered the door, he saw Hu Tiaoyu and a middle-aged man sitting in the living room of the suite. The atmosphere between the two was tense. If it weren't for the people from the 5 Immortals Hall who were watching over them, they might have started fighting this time. Su Tong walked in and took a look at the middle-aged man sitting there. The face is stern, the sky is collapsed, and there is a dark light in the luck above the head. It is obvious at a glance that he will not live long. In comparison, although Tiger Head looks fierce, his luck is much better than his brother. He is Chenda. When Hu Tiaoyu saw Su Tong, he immediately stood up and spoke. Chenda stood up after hearing the words and hugged Su Tong's fists, but said nothing. Su Tong remembered that the information Yang Zixuan gave him clearly stated that Chenda became successful with Yang Zixuan in his early years, and was considered one of the first batch of mascots. But Chenda didn't understand business, so he always had the image of a thug. Over time, he became the worst around Yang Zixuan. This time Yang Zixuan gave the biggest casino business to Chenda, which made others jealous of him. However, the news of Yang Zixuan's death has not spread yet, and coupled with Chenda's decisive and ruthless style, no one dares to take action against him for a while. If Yang Zixuan doesn't show up in another 10 days and a half, not only the local underworld leaders will be unable to restrain themselves, but Chenda may even have to take action on several companies in Russia. However, Su Tong didn't take these things seriously. He knew that Yang Zixuan pushed Chenda out just to block the gun for his family. It's just that Yang Zixuan probably didn't expect that Chenda was ruthless, but not stupid. When he realized that Yang Zixuan couldn't be contacted, he immediately took Yang Zixuan's sister and nephew and hid in Huerzhuang. He walked to the door and knocked lightly. After a while, the door was gently opened, and a woman about 40 years old carefully opened the door a crack. Yang Zixuan asked me to give this to you. Su Tong took out a portfolio and stuffed it into the woman's arms. From the corner of his eye, he saw a little boy lying on the bed and already asleep through the crack in the door. "Where's my brother?" The woman didn't look at the contents of the bag. Instead, she grabbed Su Tong's sleeve and asked, "I won't be back for a while, so pack your things and leave for the airport early tomorrow morning." The woman was startled when she heard this, and her eye circles gradually turned red. She was an adult and knew very well the meaning of Su Tong's words that he would not be able to come back for a while. But after the woman lost consciousness for a moment, she suddenly remembered something. "Wait." The woman took Su Tong's arm and pulled him into the room. "Are you Wang Xiaoguo?" Xiaoguo, this name is the name of his identity as a forest ranger when he entered the script world for the second time. In reality, I am afraid that only Yang Zixuan remembers it so clearly. But the woman made a mistake. Su Tong corrected her, "It's not Wang Xiaoguo, it's Chen Xiaoguo." Phew. That's right. After hearing the name, the woman breathed a sigh of relief, turned around and opened her handbag. "Zixuan said that if one day you come to me, let me give you this thing and a letter." Su Tong took it over. It was a small mechanism box with the mechanism skill passive of Thousand Machine God. Su Tong twisted his fingers a few times and easily opened the box, as if the box itself was his thing. After the box was opened, a black ring appeared in the box. Su Tong picked up the ring and put it on his hand for inspection. The material of the ring is very ordinary, the kind that no one would pick up if dropped on the ground. But when Su Tong calmly threw it into the prop book, something unexpected happened. "Congratulations to the player, you have obtained an important mission prop in the treasure series. This mission must be a certified player before it can be opened. Treasure Mission Series Buddhist Country. Before entering the script world, you can activate it to enter the special script world. Once you open the treasure of the Buddha Kingdom, you will have a great chance of obtaining a tailor-made special growth prop card." After receiving the prompt, Su Tong couldn't help but feel surprised and thought to himself, "No wonder Yang Zixuan always wants to become a certified player as soon as possible. Is it because of this?" Then he opened the letter Yang Zixuan left for him and scanned the contents of the letter. "Brother, after I became a player, I accidentally came into contact with a certified player who was seriously injured. The opponent is very powerful, and there seems to be a stronger team of certified players chasing him. He activated the props with the determination to die, and forcibly dragged the opponent from the certified script into the script world where I belonged. Before he died, the other party handed me an item card and this ring. He also told me that as long as he completes the task, he will be able to obtain the treasures that certified players are looking for. This is why I must become a certified player as soon as possible, but recently, I found that someone was asking for information about me. It seems that the news has leaked, so I may not be able to complete this task. If you see this letter, it means that you have not broken your promise, and this thing can be used as my reward for you." Yang Zixuan left a note. After reading the envelope, Su Tong looked at the ring again. Something that certified players can fight to the death for. Thinking of this, Su Tong collected the envelope and comforted the woman in front of him, Rest assured, I will go to Xiangzi with you tomorrow night. Okay. The woman nodded, and when she saw Su Tong, her guard relaxed a lot. After walking out of the room, Su Tong motioned for everyone to leave first. Then he quietly left a void eyeball in the living room and closed the door. Who are you? What happened to Brother Yang? As soon as Chenda walked out of the door, he asked Su Tong. He is not a timid coward like Hu Tiou. Even though he knew that the young man in front of him must not be an ordinary person since he could invite someone like Wu Run to take action, Chenda still dared to look Su Tong in the eyes, asking about his origins. Seeing this, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, but he was not angry at all. Instead, he grinned and said, "Guess. I guess you." Before Chenda could get angry, Wu Run suddenly raised his hand and knocked Chenda unconscious with a knife, saying in his heart, "Reckless man, if I want to kill you, I only need to move one finger." Then someone picked up Chenda and threw him into the storage room. "Mr. Su, the 5 immortals have lost something without delay. I hope you can find the murderer as soon as possible. I leave everything to you." Wu Run bowed deeply to Su Tong. The lost things are really important to Wu Xiantang. If it cannot be retrieved as soon as possible, Wu Xiantang may be in disaster. I'll do it as soon as possible. Su Tong didn't want to get too entangled in the issue of Wu Xiantang, and hoped to end this cause and effect as soon as possible. So he planned to go to the script world and try to use the privileges of certified players and hatred privileges to forcefully come to the opponent's script world. "Hey, where is my companion?" At this time, Su Tong looked around and found no trace of the great immortal, so he couldn't help but ask the tiger head on the side. "Oh, I almost forgot," he said he had some personal matters to deal with and asked you not to wait for him. Hutu explained quickly. "Daxian is a very mysterious person, and he is probably a certified player. Such a person's sudden arrival in the Northeast must have something to do with him." Su Tong was not worried about this guy's safety at all. He asked someone to arrange a room in the hotel and signaled to Wu Run and the others that they could leave. Closed the door. Su Tong first took out his phone and called Gao Zhou. "Dudu, it's me." Gao Zhou's breathing came from the phone. Su Tong looked at the time and then remembered that he was a person with serious things to do. "Ahem, sorry to bother you." No, wait a moment." On the other end of the phone, the sound of Gao Zhou putting on his pants was heard. After waiting for about 10 minutes, I heard Gao Zhou's voice, "Have you completed the certification task?" "Yes, just finished." "How about you?" Su Tong remembered that Gao Zhou's strength was actually very close to the level of a Grand Master. During the time he left Xiangzi, this guy should have experienced the script space again, and he guessed it would be almost soon. "No problem, it's almost here." "When will you come back?" "Ask the old man for me. If his body doesn't work, just give it to me." Gao Zhou thought about Lao Dao's physical body for more than a day or two. As a result, Lao Dao had restrictions on his body, and Gao Zhou tried his best to do nothing. Otherwise, if he could refine Lao Dao's body into a zombie, he would have reached the sky in one step. "Hey, that's a nice thought. I've kept Lao Dao's physical body. When I go back next time, you can return it and let Lao Tao exchange it with the princess's reverse training of life and death." Su Tong reprimanded him as if he hated iron. In fact, there is no shortage of corpses in the Gao family. Among the zombies suppressed in the evil cave, there are definitely top corpse kings. It just depends on when Gao Tianfang is willing to pass his family's secrets to Gao Zhou. It is estimated that at least Fengxia will have to wait until Fengxia is pregnant and has a child before she will reveal the secret to Gao Zhou. Therefore, instead of using the body of a veteran to refine zombies, it is better to use this body in exchange for a way to reverse life and death. As for how the old Taoist can reverse the practice of life and death? What does this kind of thing have to do with you? Just let the old man worry about it himself. he will definitely have a way anyway. Being reminded by Su Tong, Gao Zhou also thought about it in his heart, this is not a loss. By the way, how is Grandma Li? Mentioning Grandma Li, Gao Zhou on the other end of the phone was silent for a moment. I probably won't last until next month. Su Tong was not surprised by this result. In the Yin-Yang cave, Grandma Li slashed open the Yin-Yang mountain that blocked the souls of her people from returning to the source, but she also lost her own strength. Being able to last until this time is enough to show that Grandma Li's own strength is extraordinary. If nothing unexpected happens, we will arrive tomorrow night. Then you can follow me. After we form a team, we will drag Chang Wogu over to serve as a human shield for the two of us. Oh, aren't you afraid that he will cut your waist while you are asleep? That's why we have to bring him into the team, otherwise this guy will become a problem and we will have a headache. That's true. Su Tong and Gao Zhou chatted for a while and were about to discuss where to place Sister Yang Zixuan and her nephew. Su Tong's eyes suddenly flashed slightly, and then he hung up the phone and rushed out of the door without bothering to explain. The scene in Yang Zixuan's sister's room suddenly appeared in his sight. A sneaky and twisted shadow was quietly sneaking in through the crack in the door. The shadow was silent, just like a breeze floating in lightly, but it was clearly seen by the empty eyeball placed in the room by Su Tong. The shadow gradually stood up from the ground and slowly solidified. His eyes first glanced around. Then he walked to the bedroom door. Just when the shadow was about to reach out and grab the door handle, his ears twitched, his eyes suddenly became sharp, and he quickly turned around and punched behind him. Almost at the moment when the fist was swung out, the door behind him burst open, and a sword glowed with silver light, shot out of the air and collided with the shadow's fist. Boom! The collision between the sword energy and the fist made a sonorous sound, and the terrifying air wave suddenly exploded in the room, shattering the glass tables and chairs in the hotel. However, the shadow only shook for a moment, and then let out a sound of surprise. Certification level. Su Tong-gren was still standing outside the door. He reached out a hand through the split door, twisted the door handle, and opened the door. Looking up and down at the shadow, the Life I Chi gate was activated, and fluorescence flashed in the pupils. Just taking a quick look, I found that the evil energy was surging behind the opponent, and I couldn't see clearly the opponent's fate. The two looked at each other. Normally, such a big noise just now would definitely attract the attention of the hotel, but at this moment, the power supply of the entire hotel was suddenly cut off. For an instant, the entire room fell into pitch black silence. The shadow suddenly disappeared in front of Su Tong in the darkness. Even though Su Tong had dark vision, he suddenly lost track of the other party. However, the other party obviously underestimated Su Tong. Even without dark vision, in a dark environment, his powerful perception is not a decoration. Sensing the murderous aura in front of him, Su Tong's eyes turned cold, and the pure yang sword in his hand was as fast as the wind, and he slashed forward violently. Boom! Suddenly, sparks burst out in the air, and the faint sparks flickered, revealing the blurry outline of the opponent. The pure yang sword was actually deflected by the opponent's punch. You must know that the Chun Yang sword is so sharp that even the puppets in the training ground are almost unable to parry. The opponent's physical strength can withstand the slashes of his pure yang sword. However, Su Tong was not worried. He gave a light scold and completely increased his combat power. The crimson sword energy suddenly burst out, and in an instant, the firelight illuminated the room. Cut. Under the surging fire sword energy, cyan flames instantly exploded. The horizontal sword slashed down, and he wanted to raise his fist to block, but when his fist was raised in the air, he suddenly realized something was wrong. The fire on the blade suddenly shrank, and the flames quickly turned into a strange blood red. He sensed the ominous shadow but had no time to dodge. There were two slender daggers in his hands. The daggers were crossed and blocked in front of him like lightning. Boom! In an instant, red flames flashed, and the two daggers dissolved directly. Shadow couldn't help being shocked, and his body turned into a shadow again, flying upside down to the broken window before revealing his figure again. I saw a wisp of green smoke rising from Shadow's chest. Since I was promoted to a certified player, few people can hurt me. Yang Zixuan is not an easy boy. He can find such strong reinforcements, Shadow said solemnly. Su Tong put away his sword and stared at the other party sharply, remembering the letter left by Yang Zixuan. Are you the ones chasing Yang Zixuan? Shadow heard this and sneered. He took something he shouldn't have. Give it to me, otherwise not a single one of his family will survive. Then give it a try. Su Tong raised the pure Yang sword in his hand, but Shadow refused to continue the fight. As soon as he started, he felt that the power of the sword and the strange red flame was too overbearing. Furthermore, if you continue to take action here, it will definitely cause greater commotion. Once it is captured by a camera or mobile phone, things will be in trouble. This is not the place to take action, but don't be complacent. Yang Zixuan is in our hands. Regardless of whether you save him or not, we are bound to get it. As he spoke, the shadow figure suddenly turned into a black shadow, leaning against the glass outside the hotel and preparing to retreat. Are you leaving? Seeing this, Su Tong was about to chase him, but Daxian's voice called him from behind. Stop chasing him, shadow technique, you can't catch up. Even if you catch up, there will be cameras on the road, so don't ask for trouble. I saw the great immortal had walked behind the door at some point. When he saw the sword in Su Tong's hand, his eyes could not help but shine. What a sword! Do you know the origin of the other party? Su Tong turned to look at Daxian. Since he knew the opponent's skills, he must know the opponent's identity. Daxian did not answer. Instead, he walked to Su Tong and looked at the pure Yang sword in his hand. He couldn't help but stretched out his finger. Lend it to me. Su Tong handed the sword over, but his hand was covering the hilt and did not let go. But it was enough. The Daxian's fingers lightly stroked the sword body, and he was so greedy that his saliva almost flowed out. He couldn't help but smash it. Awesome, it seems that you have gained more than I thought. After finishing speaking, he looked sideways at the police lights approaching in the distance. They are members of the Shadow Group. They are not a first-class team, but they still have strength. At this point, Daxian paused and looked sideways in the direction of the bedroom behind him. I saw the bedroom door slowly opening a crack. The great immortal crossed his body to block the Chun Yang sword, and asked casually, the tone sounds like I want you to save people. Do you want me to help you? Rescue. Su Tong looked back at the great immortal, put away the pure Yang sword in his hand, and walked out without looking back. I am only responsible for what I promised, other things, I have nothing to do with it. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 589. Early the next morning. The car heading to the airport has stopped in front of the hotel. I saw the woman pulling the child into the car. Su Tong walked out slowly, and Daxian and Hutu stood behind. Wu Run took the luggage and said to Su Tong, everything is ready. Su Tong nodded calmly when he heard this. Let's go now. Why don't you play a little longer? The blonde girl here is very skilled. Daxian asked in a low voice. My master said that it is best for me to be a boy before I turn 30. After I turn 30, a fairy will come to be my wife. Do you believe it or not? I believe you are a ghost and a fairy. Why don't you talk about the Queen Mother? Daxian curled his lips and didn't believe a word of Su Tong's words. His eyes glanced left and right, and he lowered his voice and said, you just believe me so much. Aren't you afraid that I'll sell you out? It's pointless to ask. It should be said that if you sell me now, you won't be able to get a high price. Why not come to my team and get familiar with me? I can sell it to you with my bare buttocks on. Su Tong squinted his eyes and looked up and down at the great immortal. Hey. Daxian curled his lips and looked at Su Tong seriously. After a moment, he shook his head. You are not worth the huge investment I have made. Let's meet again if we are destined. Then you missed a potential stock. Su Tong covered his chest with a heartbroken expression. After the two chatted for a few words, Su Tong got into the car and signaled the driver to set off. Seeing this god leave, Huda couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, thinking that once this man left, he would have nothing to worry about. Just as he was thinking about it, a hand suddenly fell on the back of his neck. Hu Tiaoyu looked back and saw the great immortal looking at him with a smile. You are a talent. It would be too unfair to stay here. It just so happens that I have an property that needs someone to take care of it. How about? Huda's heart skipped a beat. He could thrive here, and his thoughts were all over the place. Thinking of the room that exploded in the hotel last night, he felt a chill in his heart. Although this incident was handled by Wu Run, it was finally determined to be a fire caused by an electrical short circuit. But Huda knew exactly what was going on. The cuts on the ground and the exploded explosion-proof glass couldn't be explained by the word fire. So he was afraid of having any interaction with these people, so he hurriedly said, Master Immortal. You are commending me. I only have this ability. It will be good if I can guard 1/3 of an acre here. Hey, it's okay, I'll give you something. I saw that the great immortal was not happy to see the tiger head, and he did not force it. After all, he still followed principles in doing things. He took out a black card from his pocket and had a white mask embossed on it. The mask looked like a human at first glance, but upon closer inspection, it didn't look like a human at all. There was an indescribable weirdness between his brows. The back is hot stamped with invitation card in silver color. Huda didn't know what this thing was, but the immortal stuffed it into his hand enthusiastically, so Huda couldn't refuse it for a while and hurriedly put it in his arms. Ha ha ha, I hope you have fun. Daxian patted Huda's shoulder, and a mark that could not be seen with the naked eye was quietly imprinted on Huda's body. Then he turned around and walked to the door of the hotel lobby with satisfaction. A mother and son were led out from the door of the lobby, one on the left and one on the right hand, holding it in the palm of their hands. 3,000 script points. Hey, this is a real deal, come on, let's go, I will take you to the airport. As the Daxian spoke, he pulled the mother and son onto the sleigh at the door, flicked his whip and said, drive. The grey horse roared loudly, pulling the three of them quickly into a small forest not far away. At the same time, on the other side of the road to the airport, the car was not moving very fast, maintaining a speed of about 60 yards. The driver was still humming a tune and looking back at the passengers sitting in the back seat from time to time. I secretly wondered about the relationship between these three people. Let's say they are a family of three. The woman is very beautiful, with a high nose bridge, deep eyes, and round face with oval seeds, giving people a very natural and comfortable feeling. It's just that no matter how well she takes care of herself, she can't withstand the erosion of time. The wrinkles at the corners of her eyes still directly betray her age. I don't know if it was a lighting problem, but the driver always felt that the woman's face was getting whiter and sicker. In contrast, the young man sitting on the left looks like he is only in his 20s. It is more reasonable to say that they are siblings. While the driver was thinking about it, a black car suddenly passed him from the side. After merging at an extremely fast speed, the car suddenly braked again. Grass. The driver was startled and subconsciously stepped on the brake. Squeak. The sudden sound of braking reverberated on the road, and the sudden inertia caught the woman and child sitting in the back seat unawares and bumped into the seat in front. Fortunately, there were no other vehicles around. When the driver came back to his senses, he saw that the black car had escaped. What was even more annoying was that the license plate of the bridge car had a fox's head attached to it, as if mocking himself. Seeing this, the driver couldn't help but yelled, "You're holding back on drafting an M, you damn boy don't know how to drive." He cursed for a while. The driver suddenly remembered that there were passengers and underage children in his car. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly turned around to check, and said apologetically, I'm sorry, the kids are okay, right?" The word BA was still in his mouth, and the driver's eyes suddenly widened. I saw the child bent over, groping with his hands under the seat, and the head on his neck was missing. "It's okay, I don't blame you, oh, it's my nose." The woman on the side covered her face and comforted the driver. Just that face. The driver's pupils shrank, and he felt as if his heart was about to jump into his throat. The originally delicate facial features were all sunken, and he grinned at the driver. The driver's face turned pale, his trembling fingers fumbled on the buckle, and his lips changed from red to blue and then from blue to purple. "Uncle, my head hurts so much, can you put it back on for me?" The child who was bent over at the side finally sat up straight, holding his head in his hands and said to Su Tong beside him. Click. Seeing this, the driver pressed the buckle with his finger, opened the door and jumped out. Fortunately, the car had stopped and there were no cars behind it, otherwise he would have been disabled even if he jumped to death. The driver struggled to get up, opened his mouth, and shouted for a long time, but he didn't say a word, and his head was empty. It wasn't until Su Tong ran more than 10 meters that he heard the driver's scream. "Help! There is a ghost, and the sesame cakes can turn into spirits." Showbiz. The woman was stunned for a moment, then took out the mirror from her handbag and took a look. When she saw that her delicate face had been squeezed into a round and flat shape, she couldn't help but let out a scream. "Damn it, who made him put on the brakes?" The child on the side let out a weird laugh. "You're okay, it works just fine with a pinch." My head almost fell off. "Whoever asked you to wear that seat belt deserves it." The woman looked at him with a vicious look, and immediately looked at Su Tong. "Master, please help me pinch my face back. I don't have time, so just make do with it yourself." At this time, Su Tong had opened the car door and walked to the driver's seat. This mother and son are not Yang Zixuan's sister and nephew, but paper figures made by himself. Then he tried to use the skill of thousand machines kill to kill the paper man with the Mahistyanshu. As a result, these two paper figures actually came to life. Not only could they move freely, they even had their own thoughts. This had to make Su Tong wonder whether the so-called Yan Shu and the master's wife had some relationship. And no matter how he looked at it, he felt that the spirit-possessing technique in the papermaker's book and the spirit-breaking technique in Yanshu seemed to complement each other. Could it be said that the inheritance of the Kimen lineage has any special relationship with the Mahistyanshu? After getting into the car, Su Tong stepped on the accelerator, and the car quickly adjusted its direction and drove forward quickly. "Master, look at my nose, it's flat." The woman tried to correct her flattened nose, but after several attempts, she failed. Instead, her face became even more terrifying. Su Tong had no time to pay attention to them. He glanced sideways at the car mirror and saw a black van following him leisurely. Sure enough, it's still here. Through the car mirror, the outlines of several people could be vaguely seen in the van. It was obvious that there were more than one or two people coming this time. I knew that the other party would not give up easily, but I didn't expect it to come so quickly. At this time, the other party suddenly stretched out a hand from the car window and threw a stone towards Su Tong. Boom! The seemingly inconspicuous stone actually smashed the car window. Then one stone after another was shot, bang bang bang. Each stone hit the car body, directly smashing a hole as big as a bowl in the car. "Oh, I killed a ghost." The woman and the child fell on the seat with their heads in their hands, and the broken glass fell on them, making them scream in fright. The child hugged his head tightly and kept screaming at Su Tong, "This is different from what you said. You didn't say that someone is going to hunt us down, and you want more money, you want more money." As soon as he finished speaking, a stone pierced the seat and made a big hole in the child's shoulder. I don't know if this guy felt pain. He looked up and looked at the hole in his shoulder. He was immediately frightened. Fainted. At this time, a sign with a fox head appeared on the side of the road. Not far behind, there was a tunnel. There was also a strange fox stone sign carved on the entrance of the tunnel. Seeing this, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, turned his head to avoid the stones thrown from behind him, stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, and drove the car straight into the tunnel. Speed up and catch up. In the van, 4 people stared closely at Su Tong's car. A tall and thin man whispered, "Boss, this guy's swordsmanship is very strong. Why don't we wait until the people from the 2nd Regiment arrive before taking action? It's not necessary. No matter how powerful you are, you can only have one person. The people from the 2nd Regiment are chasing the other group. Humph, this little trick of dividing the troops into 2 groups can't be concealed from anyone." The bearded man sitting in the passenger seat grinned and sneered. If there weren't too many cameras and tourists in the resort, they would have killed these 2 boys last night. Seeing Su Tong's car entering the tunnel, the bearded man's eyes flashed. Generally speaking, there are no cameras in such small tunnels, which is just convenient for them to do something. Immediately, the man who was driving the car stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, preparing to hit the car directly. However, the moment the car followed Su Tong's rear and rushed into the tunnel, the light in front of his eyes suddenly went dark. They were surprised to find that Su Tong's car gradually disappeared in front of them. Parking. The bearded man's expression changed slightly. After noticing the subtle changes in the surrounding space, he immediately signaled the driver to stop, and the driver slammed one foot on the brake. Squeak. There was a harsh brake sound, but the car did not stop but continued to rush forward at an extremely fast speed. Jump out of the car. Seeing this, the bearded man decisively kicked the door open and jumped out of the car. The other 3 followed closely behind. When the 3 people jumped out of the car, they saw that the car they were riding in rushed straight into the depths of darkness and gradually disappeared without even a single sound being heard. Hey hey! A burst of laughter came from the darkness. The voice seemed far away, the bearded brows tightened, and his eyes sparkled. What the hell, get out of here! With an angry roar, the sound was like thunder on the ground, and even sound waves visible to the naked eye were enough to shatter all evil objects. But the strange thing is that the sound spread very far, until it completely disappeared, but it still did not interrupt the sneaky laughter. Not only that, but a strange nursery rhyme was heard from a distance. The locks from the Fox family, the ropes from the Lu family, the steamed buns from the Bai family, the cloth from the Huang family, put on the big gray cotton padded jacket, and let the lights of the Wan family shine on you, please let me know. Bang bang bang. A door slowly rises from the ground. On the door are colorful reliefs depicting 5 domestic fairies, yellow, willow, white, fox and gray. What is this? The little man's eyes widened. A tall and thin man next to him rushed forward with a vigorous stride, and a blazing golden light shot out from the man's body, which was particularly bright in the darkness, like the blazing sun across the sky. Whatever it is, just smash it. He said this arrogantly, but it was because the man was proud enough. His body was golden, and he specialized in restraining all evil spells. When he punched him, his fist made a roaring sound. Break. With an angry shout, the door trembled and shattered into pieces under the man's fist. But when the door shattered, billows of yellow sand actually surged out from behind the door. Countless gravels flew towards him, and the man felt a sharp pain in his fingers. When he looked, he found that his hands were covered with countless dense yellow hairs. Ding! You have been affected by the Fox Fairy's secret technique, and all attributes have been reduced by 20%. Following the prompt, the man sensed that something was wrong. He stretched out his arms and a tattoo of a blue dragon and a white tiger appeared on his body. The dragon and the tiger are prosperous, and the gods retreat. The green dragon and white tiger appeared behind the man, turning him into a god, and the surrounding space distorted with his footsteps. What the hell is this trick? Look at me tearing you apart. As the man spoke, he held a blue dragon in his left hand and a white tiger in his right hand. His hands pierced into the void as if to tear the space in front of him directly open. It's very strong. Not far away, Su Tong looked coldly at the water basin in front of him, and saw the figure of a man struggling to tear the gap between reality and reality reflected in the water basin. Next to him stood a girl who was probably only about 15 years old. The girl was still wearing a school uniform. But on the girl's face, the childishness that should be expected at this age is not seen, but instead there is a bit of adult cunning. Don't be anxious, don't be anxious. If the immortal worship formation is so easy to break, how could I, the Five Immortals Hall, have been able to control Kanto for so many years? When the girl spoke, her voice sounded like that of an old woman. If you look more carefully, it is not difficult to find that although the girl is standing there, her toes are always standing up. In fact, Su Tong was also surprised when he saw the girl. Yeah, who came with me, explained. It turns out that this ancestor of the Hu family has been in Taoism for many years, and his own demonic aura is no longer something that ordinary disciples can bear. This girl is different, she has a pure yin fate, which is what people often say, the golden girl among golden boys. Only when the ancestor of the Hu family falls in love with her can she exert her full strength. However, I don't know whether it's the number of days or the fact that the Five Immortals Hall has run out of energy. After so many years, the golden boy has never been found. Otherwise, if he finds the golden boy and the beautiful girl, the ancestor of the Hu family will have the opportunity to take the most critical step and become enlightened. However, after so many years, although Jade Girl was found, there was no news about the golden boy. In 2 years, when the girl turns 18, the characteristics of Jade Girl will disappear. At that time, it will be difficult to invite the ancestor to come out. Easy. Su Tong expressed regret for this, but in his heart he was thinking that there seemed to be quite a lot of empty space in his own hall. Of course, he couldn't say this yet. After all, he was asking people to help him. He couldn't help half the time and then suddenly take the person away. This is like asking a teacher to come to your home to help your son with his homework. You haven't even finished the homework yet, so you hurriedly drag the teacher into your bedroom. The teacher may not be willing either. So this kind of thing still needs to be considered in the long term. At the moment, Su Tong was still looking forward to this so-called immortal worship formation. The Five Immortals Hall has been in Guangdong for hundreds of years. Buddhism and Taoism have been revived and fallen several times, but this is still the world of their Five Immortals Hall, which shows how powerful it is. I thought about it last night. Although I didn't intend to save Yang Zixuan, since I had promised Yang Zixuan to keep his sister and nephew safe, he would definitely do it even if the price he paid far exceeded the reward given by Yang Zixuan. So after discussing with the Great Immortal, we decided to divide our troops into 3 groups. He took the paper figures and left first. Daxian also took 2 paper figures and took another route. As for the mother and daughter, they were actually still in the hotel. In order to deal with possible pursuit, Su Tongke asked Wu Run to send a message to Wu Xiantang. The original intention was to delay it for a while. After all, the other party was also a certified player, and his strength may not be much worse than his own. Unexpectedly, when Wu Xiantang heard about this, they patted their chests and told Su Tong not to interfere. On their 3/3 of an acre, there was nothing that Wu Xiantang could not handle. I don't know whether Wuxiantang is trying to make a fool of itself, or whether it is deliberately showing off its skills to Su Tong. I just decided to take a look at it first and then talk about it. Now looking at the calm and relaxed state of the ancestor of the Hu family, Su Tong is really confused. It seemed that Su Tong was beating a drum in his heart, and he heard the old fairy of the Hu family explain, if it weren't for the fact that Zhang Zhenghao was a local, we would have been unprepared for him, and we would have been caught off guard and damaged our vitality. Otherwise, Zhang Zhenghao would have been able to survive with just Zhang Zhenghao. You can't afford to cause trouble in my five immortals hall. Mentioning Zhang Zhenghao, the fox fairy ancestor also felt itchy with hatred. It is difficult to guard against domestic thieves. One can imagine the pain in his heart when he was stabbed by his own child. Yeah. At this time, the water in the basin in front of him suddenly began to tremble. In the picture, the man stretched out his hands and actually tore the void in front of him, as if he was about to forcefully rush out of the immortal worship formation. Seeing this, the ancestor of the Hu family did not panic. He just slapped his forehead, and a black mist came out of the girl's eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Go. The black mist wrapped around the girl's cheeks and turned into thick hair, forming a long braid on the front and back of the girl's face. At the same time, in the surrounding woods, foxes raised their heads one by one and made goosebumps-inducing screams. Double-faced pigtails, evil spirits, no distinction between things before and after, no regard for the cycle of life and death, gods are blinded, heaven is impermanent. Accompanied by weird chanting sounds, the braid plunged into the basin in front of him. On the other side, the man who had just torn the formation apart suddenly screamed. Ah! I saw a large amount of fox fur oozing out from his arms. The fox fur was like spring weeds and instantly covered the man's face, and the fox furs were tangled together. There was actually a long braid on the man's face. Baiwen. Seeing such a strange scene, even the bearded and certified players couldn't help but be frightened. It's a pity that they don't have the life icon and can't see in the void. The braid on Zhang Baiwen's face has become entangled with the braid of the ancestor of the Hu family. I saw the fox fur twisting, and an open hole opened in the middle. It was like a vertical eye standing on his face. Let's do it. The ancestor of the Hu family fell, and Su Tong's pupils flashed. He saw the figures of the other four ancestors emerging behind Zhang Baiwen. They turned into a wisp of smoke and quickly got into the empty vertical eye. Suddenly Zhang Baiwen's body began to twist unnaturally. Every joint in his body was making a tooth-gripping sound. Do it. Seeing that the situation was not going well, the bearded man decisively kicked Zhang Baiwen out of the team. At the same time, he opened his hands. He waved his hands, and the shadows on the ground also twisted together, as if a tree rose from the ground out of thin air. The big black hand wanted to cover Zhang Baiwen. Ha, shadow. A burst of weird laughter came from Zhang Baiwen's mouth. If you are playing shadow in front of our Bai family, you are afraid that you are playing with a sword in front of Guangong. Zhang Baiwen raised his head, and in his originally empty eye socket, a green eyeball was shaking crazily. Then Zhang Baiwen twisted his body, and his lumbar vertebrae made a cracking sound. The limbs were twisted downwards, but the abdomen was twisted into a mess. I saw those palms grabbing the ground, and the twisted shadows around them suddenly froze in place. Eyes opened in the shadows, quickly surrounding the bearded man and others. Kill. As soon as the words fell, countless invisible shadows pounced on the three bearded men. At the same time, Zhang Baiwen's body swayed, and a flash appeared in front of the bearded man. His mouth opened like a python's mouth, and a snake head appeared deep in his throat, spitting out a black light towards the bearded man. Go to hell. Ha. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 590. Facing the black light, I felt my throat tighten, and the muscles on my throat were stretched out with blood-red marks. If you look closely, there are delicate snake scales on these marks. The snake scales continued to tighten as if they were alive, and wrapped around the bearded neck bit by bit. Dragons cover the sea and snakes wrap around the mountains. It is difficult to wrap up a plate of gods. Su Tong looked at the mark on the bearded neck. Under the Chi Men's eye of life, he saw that the top of the bearded head was coiled up by a giant snake. The whole body of the big snake is like gold, and its body is wrapped up layer by layer. Every time its body squirms, it seems to have the power to crack mountains and seas. If you are not lucky, you may not be able to hold on for long. Big Beard's luck is not bad, but it can't be said to be very good. It's just that among his luck, there is a branch of green jelly grass, and the jelly grass emits a thick green light to compete with the big snake's body. Is it a town object? It doesn't look like it. Su Tong looked at the fairy grass and secretly thought about it. Sometimes a brick, a tile, a stone can be used as a counterweight, and there is nothing strange about a piece of grass. After all, not everyone can go to the judge and tear out a page from someone's book of life and death to use as a keepsake. The bearded man's throat gradually tightened, but he did not give up resistance because of this. Instead, he opened his hands and directly hugged Zhang Baiwen heavily in his arms. Even though Zhang Baiwen scratched him crazily, he didn't fight back. It wasn't that he didn't want to fight back, but because after he forcibly kicked Zhang Baiwen out of the team, Zhang Baiwen had about 3 minutes of protection time. This place is weird, let's find a way out first. The bearded man gritted his teeth and shouted to his companions behind him, but received no response. You guys are talking. After the bearded man finished cursing, the snake scales on his neck tightened again, making him breathless. When he looked back, he saw the two of them standing there blankly as if they were possessed. A faint light gradually lit up in the darkness, illuminating the shadows of the two people. Only then did the bearded man see that the shadows of the two people were reflected on the wall, and they were being pulled by dense black palms. Hey. At this time, Zhang Baiwen let out a weird laugh, stretched out his slender nails, grabbed the bearded face, stretched out his hand and tore off a piece of flesh and blood. The bearded man snorted coldly, but did not let go of his hands, still holding Zhang Baiwen tightly and not letting go. No matter how old immortals from the 5 families tore his body into a bloody mess. What's strange is that no matter how seriously the bearded man was injured, the wound healed quickly and at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing that the 3-minute protection period was about to expire, the bearded man snorted coldly. A bunch of wild beasts dare to call themselves immortals. I will go back and tear down your family temple later. As he spoke, he saw the bearded man. He took a deep breath, and black mist as thick as wolf smoke began to form under his skin. The most evil order. The bearded man's pupils turned cold, and the black smoke on his body suddenly ignited like a flame. Extreme evil order. After consuming 300 script points to activate, it releases the power of extreme evil at the expense of one's own flesh and blood. Not good. Even the ancestors of the Hu family couldn't help but change their expressions when they saw this. Although their immortal family is a spiritual creature that enjoys the incense of the human world, in the end they are not real immortals. As spiritual beings, what they fear most is this evil spirit. The evil spirit rushed into his body, and the ancestor of the Hu family let out a dull groan, and the hair on his face suddenly turned into ashes. At the same time, the bodies of the ancestors of the other 4 families were also forced to squeeze out of Zhang Baiwen's body. Without the control of the 5 immortals, Zhang Baiwen let out a muffled scream. Although he was conscious, he was completely disabled. From head to toe, not even a single intact bone could be found on his body, like a puddle of mud. Lying slumped in the bearded arms. Way to go. Seeing this, the bearded man had cold eyes and stretched out a finger to poke Zhang Baiwen's forehead. With a sound of puff, the finger directly penetrated Zhang Baiwen's head, causing Zhang Baiwen to die suddenly on the spot. He reached out and grabbed Zhang Baiwen's prop book in his hand. After casually taking out a prop card, he turned around and rushed behind him, preparing to save people. Don't even think about it. When the ancestor of the Hu family saw this, he bit the tip of his tongue and spit out a mouthful of blood into the basin. The blood condensed in the basin and turned into a bloody doll. As soon as the doll fell into the basin, the ancestors of the other 4 families immediately got into the doll. Suddenly, a fishy light appeared in the immortal worship formation. The bloody hand flew down from the air and took a picture of the big beard. There were 5 pairs of eyeballs in the palm of the bloody hand. The 5 pairs of eyeballs twisted and gathered into a row. A white doll appeared in the center of the bloody hand. The doll held a scroll of scripture in his hand, with the 3 words Nirvana Sutra written in gold characters on it. Those who listen to my Tao will be destroyed and impermanent. Even great gods and immortals can no longer escape reincarnation and cause and effect. The doll recited scriptures in a strange voice. Suddenly the solace of the bearded man's feet froze, unable to move. When he lowered his head again, he realized that his shadow was being pulled by dense palms. Seeing this, the bearded man's heart sank, and a bad premonition came over him. The doll's chanting became faster and faster. Black scriptures fell like snowflakes. The scripture ignored the evil spirit and was directly stained on the bearded flesh. The bearded pupils tightened and found that his muscles were shrinking rapidly. As the skin aged and lost its vitality, the snake scales on the bearded throat tightened rapidly, making it difficult for him to breathe for a while, and his whole face turned red from holding back. Court death. Seeing this, the bearded man didn't dare to hesitate anymore and took out a prop card from the prop book. It was a black dagger. The dagger was only 5 inches long, so it would be more appropriate to say it was a dagger. You can't tell what color the pitch black sword is, but you can vaguely see the word fish intestines engraved on it. This is a one-time prop worth 8,000 script points. Although the bearded man feels distressed, he can't care so much. His skin and flesh were aging rapidly, which was simply fatal to him. With a touch of the bearded finger, the dagger flew up and turned into a rainbow and stabbed out. The sword of fish intestines was originally an offensive blade, and there was an unstoppable air surrounding the sword's edge. The moment the bearded man waved his hand, the sword's edge flashed and pierced the baby's chest. Kill. Naturally, the 5 old immortals also sensed that something was wrong, but at this point whoever retreated would die. For a moment, 5 pairs of eyes burst out with cold light, and they controlled the doll to smash down the scroll in its hand. Bump. The 2 collided for a moment, and the scroll shattered under the Yuchang sword, and the sword's edge burst out with a dazzling cold light. Even Su Tong, who was watching the battle outside, felt his heart beat with fear. I thought that if this thing were to deal with me, even if I had the pure Yang sword to protect myself, I might not be able to escape unscathed. However, when the sutra exploded to pieces, little did he know that the opportunity for this technique was also triggered. The broken sutra ignited a white fire, and at the same time, the flame imprinted on the bearded body also burst into flames. The bearded man suddenly aged by more than 10 years. His hair suddenly turned white. At the same time, the luck above his head was completely crushed by the big snake in an instant. Bang! The bloody doll in mid-air was immediately pierced by the sword's edge, and the water basin in front of Su Tong was also pierced. It exploded with a pop, and the specially made water basin fell into pieces. Ah! Suddenly, screams rang out, and the ancestor of the Hu family who was attached to the girl swayed and flew backwards from the girl. The fairies from the other 4 families also screamed for a while. For a time, both sides suffered losses. The immortal worship formation was broken, and Dia, who was sitting at the entrance of Sutong Hall, immediately rushed out, stretched out her hand to grab the void, and caught the ancestor of the Genfeihu family firmly. Ancestor. Hey, after all, our immortal family's luck has come to an end. The ancestor of the Hu family who opened his eyelids did not care about his injuries, but let out a long sigh. Under the immortal worship formation, there are countless dead heroes. Except for the Changchun master in the early Yuan dynasty who broke through the immortal worship formation with one sword, no one was defeated. Now they have been defeated by them. This is not only because the Five Immortals Hall is not strong enough, but also because the fate of the Five Immortals Hall is coming to an end. How could this make the ancestor of the Hu family not feel sad? The immortal worship formation was broken and the original tunnel disappeared. If you look carefully, you will see that there is no tunnel at all. It is just a dilapidated and old unfinished road. What is even more eye-catching is that the ground is full of corpses, including those of foxes, hedgehogs, and several large snakes. Several weasels struggled to get up and ran into the woods. The ground was in a mess and unsightly. Head. The two little men finally regained their mobility at this time, and immediately rushed up and pulled on the big beards to leave. Can you leave? At this time, a black shadow rushed out of the woods at a speed that could not be caught by the naked eye. Walk. The bearded man's expression changed, and he pushed the two of them away. He could no longer leave. Although he broke the immortal worship formation, his condition was also in a terrible mess. He immediately pushed the two of them away and faced the black shadow. Walk. The little man was decisive when he saw this. The two of them were not in good condition. The reason why they were easily controlled was precisely because they didn't know when they were blessed with many negative effects. So he picked up his companions and decisively turned around and ran away. Extremely evil. The bearded palm emits black evil aura, which is so strong that it is like a black spear, exuding a bone-chilling murderous aura. But Jean's hand was also bruised and bloody under the corrosion of the evil spirit, even revealing the white bones. However, the black shadow did not pause at all. A coquettish red light rose from a long sword that shone with silver light, and struck down in front of him. In a moment, the spear condensed with evil energy was completely destroyed by the red light. Recalling that his teammate Shadow Xin once mentioned that the opponent was good at swordsmanship and could summon weird red evil fire. Even his meteorite dagger could easily melt. The bearded man immediately became alert and did not take the sword forcefully. He turned sideways to avoid the red fire, and slapped Su Tong's chest with his bloody palm. Unexpectedly, Su Tong retracted the sword in his hand, clasped his fists with both hands, pointed at the bearded man and bowed down. Big Beard's strength is so strong that he can even break through the immortal worship formation of the Five Immortals Hall. Even though he is at the end of his strength, Su Tong does not dare to take it lightly. Once you take action, use all your strength without reservation. I saw Su Tong crossing his hands and bowing sharply at the bearded man. For a moment, the evil energy behind the bearded man trembled, and his head sank suddenly, as if he had been hit by a hammer, and his eyes became dizzy. With one successful blow, Su Tong regained his sword and swung it, igniting a vortex of vermilion sea of fire. The power was still dozens of times higher than the original power of this skill. Extreme Flame Turbine. Although Big Beard's consciousness has been blurred between life and death, the instinct between life and death still made Big Beard raise his fist and mobilize all his power to deliver the final blow. Explosion. Boom. The whole ground made a huge shaking sound. The two people who had just escaped also noticed the violent explosion, their eyes darkened, they gritted their teeth viciously, and disappeared into the snow without looking back. Just wait for the huge rumbling to dissipate. Su Tong slowly put down the pure yang sword in his hand, and saw that a huge pit with a diameter of 5 meters still exploded beneath the two of them. The bearded man's body still maintained a fist-pumping posture, but his mighty flesh and blood was still transformed into a smoking charcoal by the passive effect of ember and the encroachment of yin. What shocked people was that until this point, the bearded man was still alive. If you look closely, you will find that there are tender muscles squirming slightly under the burnt skin. Such terrifying vitality was simply unbelievable. The bearded man could no longer speak, and even his eyes were burned blind. He raised his charred fingers with difficulty and pointed at his neck. Good. Su Tong nodded, swung the pure yang sword and struck down the bearded man's throat. Puff. The moment the blood vessel was cut open, the bearded man couldn't help but take a deep breath greedily. He had never felt that breathing was such a comfortable thing. Ding. If you kill a player in a non-scripted world, Hichia, the other team members will record your traces and may launch a hatred system against you. Ding. You kill certified players in a non-scripted world and get 10 killing points. A prompt sounded from the props book, and Su Tong finally breathed a sigh of relief. The terrifying vitality of the bearded man was really impressive. Looking at the prop book floating on the bearded corpse, Su Tong opened the prop book and glanced at the prop cards above, feeling relieved. No wonder this guy is so difficult. I saw only a few prop cards among them, all of which revolved around prop cards that increased the increase in one's own life force. There are also a few of them that are rare to see. Especially this one, Vientiane Rejuvenation. The more damage you receive, the higher your recovery power will be. Passive Skill 1, Fukun. In non-combat state, vitality recovery increases by 120%. Recover 40% of vitality during combat. Passive Skill 2, Rising Sun. Physical toughness increased by 20%. Physical defense increased by 40%. Active Skill 1, Source of the Earth. It consumes 200 script points. After activation, it can continuously absorb life force from the ground under your feet, increasing your own recovery effect by 200%. And enhance physical defense by 40%. Immune to dark control skills below level 6. Duration, 3 hours. Cooling time, 3 days. Looking at the properties of this prop card, Su Tong felt abnormal in his heart. With this prop card and the blessing of Big Beard's other prop cards, this guy is almost like an undead human shield. If Wu Xiantang hadn't continuously hit him hard and even wiped out his luck, and he had to fight him alone, even if he could kill him, he would definitely have to pay a huge price. Although Big Beard has other prop cards, many of them are top-notch. But Su Tong did not hesitate and directly chose this Vientiane Rejuvenation. Even though he did not have the matching item card, but with this Vientiane Rejuvenation, his dark physique recovery effect will undoubtedly rise to a big level. Who wouldn't want too few things to save life at such a critical moment? After taking away the prop card, Big Beard's prop book disappeared without a trace. I don't know if this prop book will be recycled by the script space or will end up in the display cabinet of the casino. There were too many good things in it, and Su Tong couldn't help but secretly complain about the rule of why he could only draw one prop card. As for the bearded corpse, Su Tong naturally couldn't let it go. Su Tong collected the corpse and planned to throw it to Gao Zhou after returning. With Big Beard's powerful body, Gao Zhou should be able to make a good zombie. As for the remaining two, Su Tong didn't plan to chase them. Daxian mentioned before that they belong to the Shadow Group. Although they are not a first-rate team, they are still one of the best large-scale player groups. They have team skills such as Shadow Escape. If they really focus on escaping, they will never be able to catch them. Turn around and walk behind the woods. Su Tong first checked the little girl who was possessed by the ancestor of the Hu family. I was relieved when I found out that the girl was fine. In fact, the ancestor of the Hu family could have forcibly left the girl when the immortal worship formation was broken. But I'm afraid this child will die. Although Baejiaxian has declined and is about to run out of luck, he is not ready to use his brother Ma's life to prevent him from being slaughtered. When he walked up to the ancestor of the Hu family, he had already transformed into a fox, with 2 of his tails broken off, and his vitality was severely damaged. If it were more than 100 years ago, it could be restored through incense. But in today's era, this injury would have completely cut off the Taoist line. Thank you very much. This junior will remember this sentiment from the Five Immortals Hall. Su Tong knew in his heart that the ancestor of the Hu family knew that the Five Immortals Hall was running out of luck, so he forcibly set up the Immortal Worship Formation, just to use his last luck to owe them another favor to ensure that he would help them. Kill Zhang Zhenghao and help them recover the things from Wuxian Hall. You know, but Su Tong has to admit the favor. If it were not for the Five Immortals Hall, it would not be easy for him to escape from the Four Bearded Men. Not only would he have to invite the master and the princess to go out, but he would also have to pay a huge price for it. Even if he succeeded in killing the opponent in the end. It's hard to say whether he can recover before the next script world. Okay, we don't have much time. I hope my little friend can recover the things as soon as possible. The ancestor of the Hu family is no longer polite. After today's battle with Wuxiantang, their luck has been exhausted. If that thing cannot be recovered, they will not be able to rest in peace even if they are wiped out. After saying this, the ancestor of the Hu family turned around and went into the woods. Without the protection of luck, they would encounter danger at any time while walking outside. They should go back to the Five Immortals Hall to hide as soon as possible. With the remaining incense, they could still survive for a while. Let's go. Su Tong took Da Ya into the hall, turned around and got on the car that had been riddled with holes. The car started and slowly drove onto the road nearby. Just when Su Tong was about to go to the airport, he suddenly remembered something and looked back. Where are the two paper figures? Sorry, I had something to do today and I got home a little late. This update is a little short, only 5,000 words. I will make it up tomorrow. I also recommend a new book, Welcome to the Supernatural World. The author of this book is very good, and the opening chapter is also very exciting. There are very few people who write about supernatural beings now. You can support it. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 591. The Exit of El City Railway Station. Looking at his long-lost hometown, Su Tong couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. I'm back. I looked at the time and saw that it was earlier than I expected. At this point, it is estimated that the plane the mother and son were on had taken off safely. In fact, according to the plan, I should go straight to Western Hunan. As a result, when I went to the airport, I discovered that there were no direct tickets to Xiangzi that day. The fastest direct ticket will have to wait until the day after tomorrow. If you have a connecting flight, you will have to wait for a day. After checking again, there was actually a flight heading to Z City, which would take off in an hour. If you take a train from City Z back to City L, it only takes an hour. Su Tong thought in his mind that it was a matter of one line. It would be better to go back and settle the accounts with Fenglai Tower. Then it would be very convenient to go straight to Xiangzi from L City. As for building a team, he and Gao Zhou could go to the exhibition first and form a team within the exhibition. The only thing that made Su Tong unhappy was that he had to postpone the completion of the papermaker's book until later when he wanted to visit May's house. Hey, boy, can't you stay in the hotel? As soon as he walked out of the door, an enthusiastic lady walked up to Su Tong and asked. Then he lowered his voice and said with a mysterious expression on his face, if you have a little girl to play with, it's 200 yuan a time and you'll get a bowl of braised noodles for free. If you don't have fun, it's free. Faced with the aunt's enthusiasm, Su Tong couldn't help but burst into tears. He didn't expect to experience the customs of his hometown as soon as he got off the car. Wiping the non-existent tears from the corner of his eyes, he took the small card with the plump girl on it from the aunt's hand, put it quietly into his pocket, and looked at the aunt's simple and expectant smile with deep eyes. Definitely next time. The aunt's face froze, and she turned around and ran towards the next passenger, leaving the station with disgust on her face, muttering, "You've been talking for a long time. The scenery outside is really beautiful, but it's not as relaxing as the local accent." As soon as I returned to my hometown, I suddenly felt that even being scolded was a kind of moving music. Walking out of the station, Su Tong got into a taxi and spoke in an authentic hometown dialect, "Go to the 5th Academy." In fact, Master Song always left that house to himself. But it was burned by him. Without the master's house, what's the use of staying here? Now that I'm back in L City, if I want to call home, it's only the 5th hospital. After all, that's where I grew up. Arriving at the entrance of the hospital, Su Tong strode straight into the hospital. The corridors and portals of plants and trees here are already very familiar to him. He strode to Dean Wang's door and gently knocked on the office door with his fingers. "Please come in." With the long-lost voice, Su Tong opened the door. No one went in, but just stuck his head in. "Dean Wang, I'm back." Dean Wang was holding a book of information and reading it carefully. When he heard the voice, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He suddenly raised his head and took a look, but he didn't see Su Tong. This guy, why is he back? Although he saw no one, Dean Wang sat up from his chair, opened the window and looked downstairs. After a while, he saw a young man in a white coat walking into the hospital area. As if aware of Dean Wang's gaze, Su Tong turned around and waved to him. "This guy." Seeing that familiar face, Dean Wang had a complicated expression for a moment. In fact, Su Tong's departure is also a good thing for the hospital. The existence of this kid has always been a big controversy. Legal is definitely illegal. After all, he is a normal person, but he is also a normal person who was brought up by a group of lunatics. Regarding issues left over from history, they had to emphasize his illness to the outside world to increase his legitimacy. Fortunately, this kid suddenly got tired of it one day and ran out. At first, I was worried that his lawless temper would cause big trouble outside. As time passed, there was no news about him from Chief Sunday. Gradually, Dean Wang forgot about him and thought it would be good for this kid to leave. Unexpectedly, within 2 days of peace, this kid would be back. Thinking of this, Dean Wang couldn't help but glance at the phone on the table, hesitated, and gave up the plan to call the police. After all, this kid grew up in the hospital. I muttered in my heart, I hope this kid doesn't cause any trouble. When open the iron door and walk up the stairs step by step along the corridor. Woof woof woof. There was a barking sound in the corridor. The harsh sound echoed in the corridor. If you listen carefully, you can still vaguely hear the clanking and clanking of iron chains. When ordinary intern doctors who don't know anything come here, they will be frightened by the roar of dogs, fearing that a vicious dog will pounce on them if they go further. Just listen to the screams getting closer and closer. A worn-out hand puppet dog gradually poked its head out from the corner. In a strange contrast, Su Tong not only did not feel anything was wrong, but instead raised the paper dog puppet he had kneaded in his hand and faced it. Woof. This made the doll seem to be stunned, twisting back, and at the same time an old man poked his head out from behind the wall. Huh. The old man's eyes lit up and he stared intently at the hand puppet in Su Tong's hand. What's interesting is that the doll dog in the old man's hand actually made a barking sound, as if he was jealous. Hey! Su Tong's head popped out from behind the paper dog, and he stared at the dog in the old man's hand. Yell again? If you yell again, I will roast you. You. The ragdoll dog immediately whined and whirled in the old man's arms. At this time, the old man did not speak, but there was another dirty hand puppet in his hand. He rushed forward and hugged the ragdoll dog. The doll turned its head and let out a bitter curse. Okay, who did I think is back? It turns out to be you. As soon as you get home, You rush to chase away the chickens and dogs. You are afraid that others will not know that you are back. Look, you scared my precious son so much that you dare to have any trouble. I will fight with you. After scolding the baby, he grabbed the old man's ear and said, "You old man, you are still watching when others bully our dog. Ouch, it hurts, it hurts." The old man frowned and cried out in pain. Su Tong put the paper dog on the ground with a smile. He ignored the old man's soliloquy and quietly jumped past him with a quick step. "Next time I'll bring you someone with big breasts and a big butt. The big girl will be your nanny." "Hey, okay, okay, I like younger ones." The old man bared his teeth and smiled, but the doll in his hand let out a burst of curses. "Ah, who cares? I asked the old man to teach you ventriloquism, and this is how you repay me? You ungrateful little bastard." And yet, several patients in hospital clothes on the corridor and balcony couldn't help shaking their heads when they saw this. "Hey, Lao Jiang's illness is getting serious again. Isn't that right? Is that the new doctor? Why haven't you seen him before? Hey, you're new here, that's the patient." "Nonsense, it's a doctor." "Patient. Doctor. Then who are you?" "Me. I am Qin Shiwang, making money." Soon several patients began to struggle with each other in the corridor. Su Tong seemed to be used to this. He just looked around, but he didn't see the fat girl Guo Yu. Last time, he wrote double the words on this girl's medication list, and he didn't know Guo Yu's condition. "How's it going? I brought her a lot of delicious food." Thinking about it, Su Tong walked to the stairs, opened the iron door, and walked to the third floor. Compared with the bustle on the second floor, the third floor seems much deserted. Su Tong first walked to the ward on the left, opened the observation window of the ward and looked inside. The light from the window shone down on the man's face, making his back looming in the light, as if it would disappear at any time. "You came." The man did not turn around, but seemed to have everything in sight. "I have been waiting for you for a long time. I expected you to come back since the last time you came back." The man's voice was kind and approachable, as if he had experienced all the vicissitudes of the world and understood the essence of the world. "After all, our lives will eventually return to the starting point." As he spoke, he turned around and stared at the observation window with wise eyes. "Result. It's for you. I'm afraid you'll be too lonely." Su Tong smiled and threw an inflatable doll into the food opening under the observation window, then closed the window and left without looking back. Sure enough, as soon as he walked away with his front legs, he heard a burst of angry yelling from his back legs. Su Tong didn't have time to quarrel with this old bastard. After finally returning home, of course he had to go see his grandfather first. "Don't wait for him to open the door." Old A's teasing voice was heard from the door. "Did you run out of money or get tired of living outside and come back so early?" As soon as the voice fell, the door was opened. With a smooth head and a pair of snow-white eyebrows, Su Tong looked up and down as soon as he opened the door. Seeing his empty hands, he pouted and said, "Yes, it seems you are not short of money." Su Tong was not surprised at all that Olda could guess that it was his matter. The magician in the neighboring room was a pure deceiver. Who knows how many times he repeated the words he just said, day and night. But the only person who can make him furious is himself. As soon as Olda hears the scolding of the magic stick, he will naturally know that he has returned home. "I don't want to use your coffin book if I'm short of money, but I really brought you a lot of good things." Su Tong touched his hand from behind and held a hot roast chicken in his hand. Olda raised his nose and took a sip, and couldn't help but look disgusted. The roast chicken from Lao Zhang's house at the door was taught by his wife. "It's not delicious. Next time, bring me the roast chicken from Dasha Kiao Dai's house. His roast chicken tastes the best." "Didn't I just get off the train and I can't make it in time?" Su Tong walked into the room and put the roast chicken on the table. I found Wuju last time, but this kid won't follow me. Olda sat on a chair nearby and took out a bottle of Maotai and 2 cups from the small cabinet at hand. Hearing this, he couldn't help but shake his head. That's because he can't beat you. If he can beat you, he would have killed you long ago. The person drinking with me now is not you. Then next time I will bring him to see you. I remember you will be 70 in a few months. Can we have a lively dinner? Don't. Olda brought a glass of wine to Sutong. You monkey boy, you are reminding the Lord of Hell to come and take me in early. Forget about celebrating my birthday. If you can bring back this child, we can have a meal together. Let's call it a birthday. After Olda finished speaking, his snow-white eyebrows raised slightly, he stared at Sutong and added, I want to live. Okay. Sutong picked up the wine glass and took a sip. I will leave tomorrow, and I will set off tomorrow night at the latest. Where to? Xiangzi. It's a good place, with good mountains, water, and girls. Olda gnawed on the chicken feet, took 2 bites and seemed to think of something, then took out a pack of Hungtashan from the cabinet at hand. He handed one to Sutong. The 2 of them drank wine, ate meat, and smoked cigarettes. Sutong briefly talked about what happened during the time he was out. Of course, the script world and the player's identity are automatically ignored. A meal full of wine and food. Olda seemed to be tired too. Sutong helped the old man get on the bed and covered him with a quilt. Then he walked out of the room and closed the door. In the corridor, a sound of silicone friction came from the God Sticks room. Sutong curled his lips and found an empty room that was relatively clean. Cross your hands and use Beishinko. As a crack slowly engulfed Sutong's figure, the magic stick who was sweating profusely in the room suddenly raised his nose. Who is grilling mutton skewers? There will be another update in the evening. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 592. Pass through the decaying ancient pavilion cities of the abyss. Sutong strode to the gate at the deepest point of the abyss. Ka. After the door was slowly opened a crack, there was endless black water in front of him. If the eldest princess summoned black water before and could barely call it a river, now it can only be described as a sea. In the center of the Black Sea, countless skeletons were piled up to form an island. On the island, the withered old crooked neck tree actually sprouted young green shoots. The eldest princess was like a phoenix landing on a branch, sitting cross-legged on it, her aura becoming more and more ethereal. It seems that since the eldest princess became enlightened, her strength has been improving almost every day. Even this vast Black Sea has become unfathomable, emitting an indescribable smell. Anyway, Sutong felt a numbing sensation in his nose after taking a whiff. The eldest princess didn't even open her eyes, and a stone road appeared in front of her. Sutong lowered his head and ran quickly from under the eyes of the eldest princess. He always felt that although this girl had her eyes closed, her neck always felt bright. After crossing the Black Sea, a pergola appeared in front of us. What is strange is that there is a sheepskin hanging in the pergola. Sutong walked in and took a look. The sheepskin hair actually reflected different luster at different angles. He couldn't help but stretched out his hand to touch it curiously. Huh. When your fingers touch the sheepskin, it feels cold. There was no head in the sheepskin. Sutong searched for the head but could not find it. Instead, he saw a pair of very strange horns hanging on the pergola nearby. The horns look like those of a sika deer, but they are much larger than those of a sika deer. There was a dark purple luster on it, and little golden lights like broken stars were shining on it. Sutong Zhen was fascinated. Then I heard a shout from not far away, "Master, stop looking and come in to eat." I saw the old Taoist carrying a bunch of mutton skewers and shouting to Sutong while eating. Good guy, I saw that the mutton skewers in the old Taoist's hands were still sizzling with oil. Before anyone came over, the aroma was already hitting Sutong's nose. Hey, it smells so good. Are you actually eating barbecue? Su Tong walked over and looked at the mutton skewers in the old Taoist's hand, and reached out to pick one. As a result, the old man turned sideways and said, "Hey, master, I'll give you one skewer, but I'm missing one. You want to eat what's left in the backyard, but if you come 2 days later, I'm afraid you'll only be able to drink a mouthful of mutton soup." Su Tong pouted and walked into the courtyard without looking back. Sure enough, he saw his master Song Lejeng sitting next to an earthen stove, sprinkling a lot of spices with his hands. The fragrance, Su Tong couldn't help but feel a little greedy. "Master." Su Tong walked over and smashed the meat in his mouth. Looking at the grilled meat skewers, he couldn't help but stretch out his hand. "Hey, these belong to your master. You send them over first, and the next batch will be yours." Mr. Song pointed to the meat skewers on the stove and said with a mysterious face, "If your master hadn't predicted that you would come today, we would have started eating. This is a good thing." Su Tong raised his nose and felt that the aroma was getting more and more fragrant. He saw the mutton skewers on the grill sizzling in the charcoal fire, and the appearance was slightly browned by the roasting and oil frying. Zi. A drop of mutton fat fell on the charcoal, and white smoke suddenly appeared from the charcoal fire. The alluring aroma of barbecue filled the air, and Su Tong almost cried with greed. Immediately he picked up the grilled meat skewers on the plate and ran to the master's yard. "Master didn't go fishing today. Instead, I made a pot of tea, hugged a volume of ancient books, and sat in the yard with my legs crossed, reading. I saw Su Tong coming up with a plate." The master showed a smile on his face and pointed to the chair beside him. "Sit down and eat together." "Oh, I know you love me the most, master." Su Tong had been waiting for this sentence for a long time. After hearing this, he immediately sat down, picked up a bunch and sent it to the master first. Then he picked up a bunch and put it in his mouth to devour. When you take a bite, the lamb is charred on the outside but moderately tender on the inside. Tasty. The mutton has no mutton smell, but has a special scent of grass. With the seasonings on it, Su Tong dares to pat his chest and guarantee that this is definitely the best mutton kebab he has ever eaten. After the master ate 2 skewers, he stopped eating. He pushed the plate in front of Su Tong and motioned for him to finish it all. Sure enough, from the point of view of making a fool of himself, the master would never be stingy about his love for Su Tong. "Master, where did this mutton come from?" Su Tong's mouth was full of oil after eating, and he didn't forget to ask about the origin of the mutton. "Someone gave it to me. You can see the sheepskin and horns outside. You take the horns and keep the sheepskin. Let your master make you a sweater." Shuigui said with narrowed eyes. Su Tong blinked and asked curiously, "What should I do with the horn?" "Go back and crush it into powder. Next time you meet a god, take it out and sprinkle it on your body. As long as you are not a great god, they will not be able to do anything to you." "Does it still have this effect?" Su Tong immediately became energetic. With his own fighting power, he can escape unharmed against an enlightened person, and even have the power to fight. But if you are facing those gods, it will be more troublesome. These gods are very difficult to deal with even if they have just a thought. If it happens like Hecate did last time, the godhood returns and the true god comes, he will definitely not be an opponent. The most reliable way to deal with this kind of spirit is to use incense and merit to destroy it. But after the last yin-yang cave, my incense merits were gone. Now that the master said this, Su Tong was excited and became deeply curious about this sheep. He picked up a bunch of mutton skewers and threw them into the prop book. It turned out to be okay if I didn't look at it, but I was shocked when I looked at it. The name of this mutton kebab is actually not sheep, but dragon. Elang mutton, rare. The nature of the dragon is inherently lustful, and it took several generations of crossbreeding with the red goat beast to look like this. Even so, it is still a dragon species. For those who eat it, their health will increase by 10%. Obtain the blessing of dragon energy, your luck will be permanently increased by 15%, and your lifespan will be increased by 30 years. Below the entry, there are 2 lines of dark entries. Ilong Power, 6/100. Ilong Soul, 6/1000. This number corresponds to the number of mutton skewers he has eaten. Su Tong estimates that he needs to eat enough mutton skewers to wake up. Although I don't know what ability it is, the name sounds like it is very powerful. Good guy, what kind of mutton is this? It's clearly dragon meat. Looking at the entry, Su Tong instantly felt that the mutton skewers in his hands became heavier. After swallowing the mutton in his mouth, Su Tongke looked at the master eagerly. Old man, whoever gave you the sheep is still short of people. I just want to see what this sheep looks like. Who is Master Shuigui? Of course he can tell that Su Zaiwa is telling his own story. But it's not his turn to be a bad guy. If you like it, I will continue to catch it for you next time. Anyway, there are still a lot of sheep in that place. It's not a big deal to catch 1 or 2 more. It's just that the place is not easy to get in. Once you go in, you can't find a reason to get out. Su Tong's eyes rolled around, and he probably understood what he said. He lowered his head and said nothing, and after eating all the mutton on the plate, the master threw a bead from his sleeve to Su Tong. As soon as Su Tong dropped the bead, he found that it was frighteningly hot. Holding it in your hand, it feels as hot as holding a red-hot iron. He immediately threw it into the prop book. Chi Pearl, rare treasure. Although the Ilong sheep is not a purebred, it has the blood of the red goat beast and the Ilong. It is extremely strong and has a bead on its lower jaw. It is as warm as fire and its taste is sweet. It can be eaten, can be used to refine treasures, can be used as medicine, and has endless wonderful uses. Go back and find an eye seller. The colder the better. Eat this. It will be of great benefit to you. The master said earnestly. Okay. Su Tong nodded and wrote it down. He happened to be going to find Meidu. Isn't their house a crematorium? I just wanted to borrow their freezer. By the way, master, do you know Yanshu? At this time, he remembered the doubts in his heart and simply asked the master. After all, the master has a lot of ink in his belly. He has read many scriptures and studied Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. It is best to ask him about this matter. As soon as these words came out, Shuigui raised his eyebrows slightly. Hey, you asked the wrong person about this. After the words fell, Shuigui's eyes became colder and he looked outside the archway of the courtyard. What are you still doing? Come in and tell your apprentice how you released the female slave. Behind the courtyard gate, I saw Master Song with a grimace on his face. When he came over with a baked dinner plate, he did not forget to glare at Su Tong, which meant, you brat, how dare you put on my little shoes. Su Tong cried out in his heart that he was wronged. But Master Shuigui snorted coldly, took the plate from Master's hand, and placed it in front of Su Tong. Pointing to the 2 meatballs on the plate, this is the lamb loin, the most delicious part. It has been roasted for half an hour, so eat it while it's hot. Well. Su Tong glanced at the master with a sad face from the corner of his eye, silently picked up the roasted kidney and started to chew on it. Not to mention, the taste actually made Su Tong's taste buds bloom. It looked like a thick layer of fat on the outside, but it turned out to be dry and burnt when chewed. It was full of oily aroma, like a piece of hot butter, paired with the soft and tender meat below. The inner loin tastes absolutely amazing. Immediately, he ignored his master's ugly expression and ate with gusto. At this moment, Mr. Song was helplessly sitting on a small bench nearby, looking at the master with a sad face. Master, didn't I explain to you that Yanshu itself comes from the same lineage as our 7 sects? Little did I know that Yanshu could be so dangerous. In addition, that night, the old monk came to ask for scriptures and interrupted the summons. As a result, he released the female demon in a daze. Mentioning what happened that night, Mr. Song's expression gradually became serious. Su Tong wisely put the shisha pipe filled with shredded tobacco to Mr. Song's mouth. Mr. Song took it, slowly took a sip, and then said, "Actually, the so-called Yanshu is not created by us mortals. Strictly speaking, it is an immortal art, and it is an extremely ancient immortal art. I also learned about this from your wife. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 593. At that time, monk Suanmu of Guanghua Temple stole scriptures and gave them to Lao Song. In fact, the original intention was just to give Mr. Song a comfort. After all, the Song family was going through huge changes at that time, and I was afraid that he would not be able to think about it. Although the sutra was rumored to be magical, none of the elders in the temple could understand it, so stealing it to him was actually just to give him a thought. But monk Suanmu probably couldn't even dream of it. This scripture is not a scripture at all, but the Yanshu hidden in the scriptures. Even if it is not complete, it is enough for Mr. Song, who comes from 7 families. Even though his master, Shuigui, had not taught him Bai Shangkao, he had no reservations about the 7 paper skills. Once he combined the Yanshu and the paper skills, he was able to fiddle with the master's wife in a daze. Monk Suanmu also knew about this, but there was nothing he could do about it. The origin of the master's wife is very strange. Mr. Song also tried several times before he learned that her identity was not simple. She was an ancient god. He was woken up by Mr. Song from his deep sleep. Attached to the paper man, but because Mr. Song is the caster and the caster is immortal, she cannot do whatever she wants. In the following 30 years, the master's wife stayed by Mr. Song's side. Make a paper man during the day, and cover yourself with a quilt or something at night. Even Song La Yang's lifespan has long been over. If the master's wife hadn't cast a spell to cover his aura and extend his life, he might have died long ago. Sitting on the chair, Mr. Song told what he knew one by one. At the end of the sentence, I couldn't help but turn my eyes red and look at Master Shuigui angrily. "You always left me happily and left me alone. Why don't you allow me to find a companion by myself?" After hearing this, the master had no choice but to drink tea. Speaking of the 3 masters, apprentices, grandfather and grandson, the one who had the hardest time was Master Song Lao. The master opened his big hand and killed with great force. The master is going to live with his tail between his legs, and there will be no one in the world who doesn't want to kill him. If it weren't for the background of the Great Era, when everyone is having a difficult time, and it's difficult to protect themselves, and the people of the 3 religions are spreading the word, and they are not allowed to deliberately retaliate, otherwise Master Song Lao's life will be even more difficult. In contrast, Su Tong stood completely on the shoulders of giants, and naturally could not personally experience the pressure his master endured. After Master Song finished complaining, he turned his head and said, "The art of Yanshu has actually been lost a long time ago, and what remains is only a star." However, although the 7 paper skills are inherited from the Plum Blossom Taoist, the Plum Blossom Taoist is not the creation, or, there is a large possibility that paper art evolved from Yan art to some extent. Yanshu was too weird and strange. After the master's wife, Mr. Song tried it a few more times. But the results were unsatisfactory. "Why did you ask about this?" After Mr. Song finished talking about the matter, he looked at Su Tong, wondering why Su Tong would ask about such an unconventional matter. Su Tong ate the roasted loin on his hand in 3 or 2 mouthfuls, and then waved his hand to summon the fat man. "I'll try using Yanshu to see if I can perfect it." The summoned object of Big Fat is very special. He has a soul and can understand any of Su Tong's orders, but the soul has not been completely revived. When he does not give orders, Big Fat is like a puppet, without consciousness. Su Tong tried this many times to no avail. Until I got the 1000 God Killer and obtained the Yanshu inside, I couldn't help but start to have thoughts in my heart. Since Yanshu and Jishu can be combined, is it possible to completely perfect Big Fat and let him fully possess his own thinking? Well, you can try it, but before you try it, you'd better understand the Paper Craftsman's book thoroughly. Master had seen Big Fatty before, and he remembered that he mentioned that this paper man was very special. After observing carefully, the master now signaled Su Tong to wait. None of them are proficient in Yanshu, and Su Tong, the paper craftsman, has not yet been able to truly apply it to his heart. Even the master himself has not reached perfection in the 7 crafts. In this case, the master still hopes that Su Tong will think through at least one of them thoroughly before trying it. This is the safest way. Otherwise, if you try it rashly like Master Song, it will be counterproductive in the end. Okay, I'll leave for Xiangxi tomorrow. It seemed that if he wanted to upgrade Big Fatty, he could not bypass the 7 paper techniques no matter what. In this case, he set off as early as possible for Xiangxi. After arriving at Meidu's place and completing the paper craftsman's book, he can try to use Yanshu to completely upgrade Big Fatty. But before leaving, I have to go to Fenglai Tower. Just as Su Tong was thinking about his action plan for tomorrow, the master coughed lightly. Ahem, by the way, there is one more thing I want to discuss with you. Hey, just say so. After all, you can't eat this mutton for free. Su Tong looked at Master Song with a smile. All the mutton was eaten in his stomach, and he couldn't spit it out. There must be something waiting for him. It's probably the sequelae of the last time, the 9E Underworld Ghost King. Do you know who is behind the 9E Underworld Ghost King? Su Tong shook his head. He really didn't know this. However, if you think about it with your toes, you should understand that he must be one of the top figures in the underworld, otherwise he would be able to allow the 9E Underworld Ghost King to do evil in the world and reverse yin and yang. Not even Qin Tianjian dared to kill him. Have you ever heard of Juyuba's Tianzun? Su Tong continued to shake his head. Well, this guy has quite a few names. There is another name you must have heard of, the great Emperor Fengdu of Bian. Oh, Su Tong opened his mouth as if he suddenly understood. When Master Song was about to continue speaking, he shook his head and said, I don't understand. Mr. Song was so choked that his face darkened, and he glared at him fiercely. I don't understand what you are doing. He is the second in command of Hades, and he is the biggest among the princes. I understand now. No wonder it's called Jui Mingui King, because the co-authors are from the same department. Su Tong thought about it and signaled his master to continue. Although there was nothing wrong with your master about what happened last time, my younger brother was killed. After all, I felt unhappy, so I issued a warrant to your master. You give it a try. If you have a chance, do it. If you don't have a chance, delay it. Mr. Song said and handed a warrant to Su Tong. I don't know what material the golden warrant is made of. It felt heavy when held in the hand. When he opened it and looked at the words inside, Su Tong didn't recognize any of them, but at a glance, the meaning was already reflected in his mind. Bian's execution order ordered the local guardian gods, land gods, mountain gods, and city gods to assist in handling the case. This is an order that can order a god to be used by oneself, and the content behind it is to kill the cult. At the same time that Su Tong got the order, a mission reminder came from the prop book. Ding, you have obtained the Big Script World mission, Zeus Yet. Mission requirements, kill the evil god of Mochuo cult, Mochuota. Mission background, Tang, UN. Task time, none. Mission penalty, none. The notification sound from the prop booklet, combined with the meaning of the warrant, showed that Su Tong already understood the mission. Well, is there any reward for killing this guy? Su Tong closed the order book in his hand and looked at the master curiously. The thing hasn't been done yet, you want a reward? Mr. Song glared at him angrily. The master looked at Su Tong with a smile. What do you want? Can I make a request? Okay, let's see if it can be fulfilled depending on the request. Master Shuigui picked up the tea bowl and took a sip of tea. Unexpectedly, Su Tong immediately said, Master, do you want a wife or not? I have already found someone for you. She has big breasts and a big butt. The most important thing is that she can give birth. Puff. Shuigui squirted out a sip of tea and looked at Mr. Song with a strange expression. His deep eyes made Mr. Song suddenly excited. He picked up the hookah pipe in his hand and threw it at Su Tong. You bastard, let's fight you. Su Tong dared to say this, so of course he was already on guard. He took the hookah pipe and put it away in the prop book, then ran out. While running, he shouted, Master, you are a well-fed man and don't know how hungry a man is. You have a wife and someone to love you. Why are you so anxious when I find a companion for Master? Come here and watch me tear your mouth apart. Mr. Song didn't know where he pulled out a leg of lamb and threw it at Su Tong. Su Tong hurriedly took it from behind and grinned, knowing that the master still loved him. He quickly put the leg of lamb away and ran out of the void. Between. Old Song angrily chased him to the door of his house. Seeing that this kid had already crossed the Black Sea, he looked at his leaving figure with a dumbfounded expression. This kid, no matter how big or small. After he finished speaking, the old man sitting on the stone beside him sneered, Really? Why do I feel that this kid has grown up all of a sudden? What's the meaning? Although Mr. Song is shrewd, there are some things that he cannot see as clearly as a cunning old man like Lao Dao. The old Taoist grinned and sneered. He did not answer Mr. Song directly. Instead, he pointed around in a non-answering manner. This is a good place. The back is connected to the underworld and the front is connected to the world of the sun. You can come and go freely. With your master holding you down as an inspector, the people above can only turn a blind eye. How many people are there in such a good place? If you want to come in, I'm afraid there's no way. When Mr. Song heard this, he immediately understood and slapped his thigh. Good boy, you have learned to sell us in return. Now he finally understood why his master looked at him so wrong just now. He immediately turned around and ran into the house. Master, you can't promise him. Listening to Mr. Song's shouts, the old man put a piece of straw in his mouth and picked his teeth, and sneered, Tisk, this old guy is eager to get more people on this pirate ship, young man. After the old Taoist finished speaking, he suddenly frowned and muttered, No, this guy sold his master today, and he might sell the poor Taoist tomorrow. I have to find an excuse to stop this guy in advance queue. Thinking of this old Taoist's heart, he immediately had an idea. The next time this kid comes back, he will stop the idea of selling himself. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 594. After coming out of the gap between reality and reality, Su Tong burped with satisfaction. After looking at it, I ate 2 roasted lamb loins. He is only 20% away from awakening the power of Ilang. The big leg of lamb that his master gave him, I guess he will be able to awaken after he goes back and eats it. Awakening the Chi Dragon soul is much worse. After all, the awakening of the Chi Dragon power only requires 100 points. To awaken the Ilang soul, you need 1000. The gap is not that big. It seems that it is impossible to reach the level of awakening just by eating Ilang meat. Hope can only fall on the Ilang pearl. Su Tong remembered what the great immortal said. Shadow Team is not a first-tier team, but it is not a small team either. For a team like this, it would be okay to rank in the top 20 among the second-tier teams, but it would be difficult to even rank in the top 15. That relaxed tone and inadvertent contempt made him feel a deep sense of pressure when he thought about it at the moment. The strength of a team that has not entered the top 20 has already made him feel the pressure. So what if he encounters the top 10 or even first-class teams mentioned by the great immortal? Thinking of this, Su Tong felt more and more pressed for time. When he walked out of the room, he only heard gentle snores in Old A's room. Su Tong stood at the door and hesitated, but still did not open the door. "Old guy, I'll come back to see you next time." Saying that, Su Tong turned around and walked down the steps. Not long after Su Tong's front foot left. In the empty corridor, a slight buzzing sound sounded. It was the door of Shengun's room being opened. Shengun looked at the corridor in front of him solemnly. "Gudong." Swallowing a mouthful of spit from the god's throat, listening to the faint snoring in the next room, he poked his toes out little by little. After hesitating for a long time, he finally took the foot back from the door. "Why?" The magic stick sighed. Although there was a helpless look on his face, his eyebrows were no longer as serious as before, and he felt like he was relieved of a heavy burden. "I don't know if it was an illusion, but as soon as the magic stick closed the door, the snoring in the neighboring room on one side became deeper and louder." Dingling bell. In front of Lijing Gate in the old city, several teenagers rode bicycles and hurried past. The old city is very big, but when it comes to it, Lijing Gate is the real old city. It's hard to imagine that this old and dilapidated city in front of us, with streets full of two-story buildings, was once the city center in the world hundreds of years ago. Everyone is proud to speak an authentic L city dialect. Just like Ximenchuixu and Yegukan, when the two of them battled against each other at the top of the Forbidden City, they started with the same magical words, "Hum me, you little turtle grandson." Su Tong walked on the street, passed through a small alley that looked familiar, and walked directly from an unknown street intersection to Ma Shi Street below. The life icon is activated. His eyes looked into darkness. "I remember that in the script world, this place used to be a night market." The rice noodles and wontons on the edge of the bridge made Su Tong's stomach growl again when he thought about it. It's a pity that it can no longer be seen. The street has become more chaotic than before, because the houses on one side have been demolished and are full of holes, and the street on the other side is surrounded by green iron sheets. You can see the unfinished buildings behind the iron sheets. There was not even a single person visible on the street. It seems that this place has been designated as a demolition area. There are very few people living here. Most people have already received the demolition money and moved away. Su Tong walked down the street. Not far away, a strange fluorescent light appeared in the gray world in front of him. It's the big locust tree. The locust tree still looked like what I had seen in the script world, but it was protected by iron railings and covered with various horizontal bars. This tree is interesting. Su Tong looked at the old locust tree. When he entered the script world for the first time, he didn't have any magical eyes. He only knew that this tree was a little unusual. Now with the help of Minji and Kimin, I found that this old locust tree really has some tricks. The heart of the tree is obviously empty, but every branch is still green and cheerful. There are thick incense merits wrapped around the Minji and Kimin. You must know that in today's world, places like Wuxiantang have lost their incense and even their luck. But this tree is still enjoying the supply of incense, which is ridiculous. Not far from the old locust tree, Su Tong's eyes locked on a wooden building compound in front of him. I saw that the courtyard gate was open. The dilapidated old wall of the courtyard gate had obviously just been painted. The brand new gate looks out of place with the surrounding dilapidated houses. And on the gate of the courtyard, there is a signboard with bright red characters written on it. Feng Lai Lu. Looking at this sign, Su Tong couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The Feng Lelu in front of him was completely different from the Feng Lelu he saw in the script world. With such a big vermilion door and a bright red signboard, I don't know which genius kid came up with the design. Compare it to the threshold of a high-end mansion like Fenglilu in the script world. The Fenglai building in front of me looks like a bathing center. The exaggerated style is just as conspicuous as changing the wind into a phoenix. Walk through the door. I saw no one in the yard. There was only an old man sitting in the yard, sweeping the leaves on the ground with a broom. When Su Tong approached, the old man noticed someone. He immediately raised his head and looked at Su Tong blankly. Accommodation? Let's have tea. Find someone. No one. The old man waved his hand and put down the broom in his hand. Everyone has left. There is no one here now. Su Tong took advantage of the situation and sat on the stone chair in the courtyard, then shout out the know-it-all to me. Know-it-all, know-it-all, if you want to send a courier, go out and walk to the east, there's nothing here. The old man's face darkened, and he waved his hand to drive people away. Etc. At this time, someone upstairs shouted. A young man stuck his head out from the second floor, glanced at Su Tong, and immediately closed the window, followed by the sound of opening the door and going down the stairs. After a while, the young man came down the stairs. He was just in his early 20s. He first looked up and down Su Tong's body. Then he said, "You must be Su Tong. My grandfather left you 3 words and 1 thing." Su Tong didn't ask what the words or things were. Instead, he looked at the young man in front of him and found that the young man's appearance was still similar to the original know-how. "What about your grandfather himself?" "These are my grandfather's first words." "You are late." As the boy said this, he walked to the side room on the first floor and opened the door. When Su Tong took a look, he saw a black and white photo frame placed inside. The old man in the photo frame has a face full of wrinkles, and he no longer looks like the know-it-all he once was. "A week ago, my grandfather spoke for the first time and called our whole family over. After a reunion dinner, he told you 3 sentences and fell asleep that night." Hearing this, Su Tong suddenly twitched the corner of his mouth and thought to himself, "Well, this guy ran very fast. I was afraid that I would settle the score with him, so I lay down in the urn. I really have no temper with him. What about the remaining 2 sentences? Kill as you like." The young man raised his head. He didn't know what this sentence meant. He only knew that his grandfather pulled him and told him again and again that he must get the words. Then the young man took out a small wooden folder from his arms and put it on the table. "Go out and turn right, go east 300 steps, go north, Wang's Noodle House, everything is clear." Not to mention Su Tong, even the boy himself felt weird when he said these words. Su Tong frowned and said nothing. Killing at will, does it mean that his descendants will kill at will? But Su Tong's remaining scrutiny was on the young man. The young man was an ordinary person like the old man. Let yourself kill these ordinary people, even if the other party is the direct grandson of know-how. This is a bottom-line issue. Jianghu matters, Jianghu matter. What do you mean by bringing in people from outside the arena? Deliberately disgusting himself to make sure that he would not kill his grandson? Thinking of this, Su Tong looked at the photo, and in a trance he seemed to see know-how, lying on the ground, with an arrogant look on his face. "You want revenge? I'm already dead, what can you do to me?" As for the last sentence. Thinking of this, Su Tong stood up decisively, put the small wooden shelf on the table into his pocket, got up and walked out. Before walking to the door, Su Tong looked back at the black and white photos in the room. "Your grandfather hasn't passed his first 7 years yet. Just after last night." The young man didn't understand what Su Tong meant and replied without knowing why. "Oh, I see." Hearing this, Su Tong narrowed his eyes. Then he walked towards the east without looking back. According to Bai Shitong's last message, Su Tong walked east along the street. After reaching the intersection, he walked up and saw a Wangji sweet potato noodle restaurant. The noodle shop is very small and run down. It was in the alley again, and the tables outside were covered in dust. I opened the curtain and saw 3 or 4 small tables inside. Eat. The landlady poked her head out of the room and asked after seeing Su Tong. Big bowl of sweet potato noodles. Su Tong nodded and found a seat to sit down. He took out the wooden shelf from his pocket, opened it, and saw something dark inside. Su Tong picked it up and wiped it casually a few times, revealing its true appearance, a broken jade section. This thing looks so familiar to Su Tong, isn't it a part of the fairy treasure? Holding it in his hand, Su Tong could still feel the vigorous life breath of this thing. Looking at this thing, Su Tong couldn't help but wonder. It seemed that the world of the script could not completely affect what happened in reality. I just collected the fairy treasures in the script world, so in reality, can I collect another one? Just when Su Tong was thinking about it. Lady boss, I'm here. It's a very big bowl of noodles. Add more chili peppers because the noodles need to be soaked in water. Suddenly a familiar shout interrupted his thoughts. Su Tong was startled and slowly raised his head. Looking at the fat black man standing at the door with a big waist and a big gold chain hanging around his neck, his face instantly brightened. Oh, so the third sentence should be here. The fat man at the door also noticed the eyes looking at him, and looked back warily. In an instant, the muscles on his dark and fat face trembled, and he screamed, "Why the hell is it you?"